Ayubowan, Vanakkam. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the International Symposium of the Asia Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management, hosted right here in the beautiful island nation of Sri Lanka. It is an absolute honor to have each and every one of you present here today as we delve into the critical theme of climate smart collaboration, accelerating transition towards a climate resilient tomorrow. We are now witnessing the arrival of our chief guest, the ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Mr. Mizukoshi Hideki. Please rise as we welcome our ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Mr. Mizukoshi Hideki. As dawn introduces daylight, lighting a lamp signifies hope and prosperity. To mark the auspicious beginning of the event, we now invite the following distinguished officials to come forward for the traditional ceremony of lighting the oil lamp. His Excellency Mr. Mizukoshi Hideki, Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, Michio Kanda, Country Manager for Maldives and Sri Lanka, the World Bank, Major General Sudhanta Ranasinghe, Director General Disaster Management Center, Professor Dr. Kazi Kwamruzaman, Chairman APAD International, Mr. Kensuke Onishi, Chief Executive Officer, APAD International. Deshamanya Dr. Surat Wickramasinghe, renowned architect and planner. Air Chief Marshal Kolita Gunatilaka, retired former Chief of Defense Staff and Commander of Air Force. Mr. Bhuvanika Abesurya, Chairman, Janata Estates Development Board. Mr. Farizan Hashim, the Country Director of APAD Sri Lanka. Mr. Faisal Jalal, representing APAD International. Ms. Riza Neri, representing Connecting Business Initiative. Mr. Jongwoo Lee, representing APAD International. Thank you, distinguished officials. With the lamp illuminating our path, please rise for the national anthem.
Sri Lanka Mata, Upper Sri Lanka, Namo 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 Mata.
Thank you. Please be seated. In a time where the urgency of climate change is undeniable and collaborative action is imperative, we have gathered here today with an optimistic shared vision of crafting a sustainable future. It is now our distinct honor to introduce to you the distinguished officials who have graced us with their presence today. I kindly invite the following distinguished officials to grace the stage and officially inaugurate the symposium. Chief guest, His Excellency Mr. Mizukoshi Hideki, Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka. Guest of honor, Ms. Chio Kanda, Country Manager for Maldives and Sri Lanka, the World Bank. Special guest, Major General Sudanta Ranasinghe, Director General Disaster Management Center. Professor Dr. Kazi Kwamruzamon, Chairman, APAD International. Mr. Kensuke Onishi, Chief Executive Officer, APAD International. Mr. Firuzan Hashim, the Country Director of APAD Sri Lanka. Ms. Neki Kaori, Director, Head of Management Office, Executive Director, Civic Force, APAD Japan. Kindly remain seated for 5 minutes.
In a world where the forces of nature have begun to fray, where the harmony between earth, animals, and humans is threatened, we gather today to confront the pressing reality of our time. The once gentle rhythms of our planet now echo with distress. Nature, once vibrant and resilient, bears scars of climate change. Animals, our fellow inhabitants, suffer as their habitats vanish. Humans, too, face the harsh consequences of a changing world. Yet, amid these challenges, a beacon of hope emerges: the power of collaboration. As we stand at the pivotal moment in time, we must acknowledge that it's not too late. Together, we can forge a new path to accelerate a climate-smart path toward a resilient tomorrow. Through sharing ideas, harnessing innovations, and fostering unity, we have the potential to heal our planet. It's a call to action that transcends borders, cultures, and backgrounds. Our collective efforts can set the stage for a world where nature flourishes, animals thrive, and humans prosper. A world where lush forests stretch to the horizon, oceans teem with life, and every living being coexists in harmony. Imagine handing down to the next generation an earth rejuvenated, an earth reborn through our dedication. Let us embark on this journey of transformation together. As we gather to explore and inspire, let's seize this moment to chart a course towards a wonderful world. A world of collaboration, hope, and a better tomorrow. Welcome to the APAD International Symposium 2023, where ideas become actions and collaborations become catalysts for change.
With an optimistic shared vision of crafting a sustainable future, welcome to the APAD International Symposium. It is now our honor to introduce to you the distinguished officials who have graced us with their presence today. I kindly invite the following distinguished officials. Chief guest, His Excellency Mr. Mizukoshi Hideki, Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka. Guest of honor, Ms. Chio Kanda, Country Manager for Maldives and Sri Lanka, the World Bank. Special guest, Major General Sudanta Ranasinghe, Director General, Disaster Management Center. Professor Dr. Kazi Komruzaman, Chairman, APAD International. Mr. Kensuke Onishi, Chief Executive Officer, APAD International. Mr. Firzan Hashim, the Country Director of APAD Sri Lanka. Ms. Neki Kaori, Director, Head of Management Office, Executive Director, Civic Force, APAD Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, as we stand on the cusp of a day filled with enlightening dialogue and transformative insights, it is my distinct honor to invite Mr. Firzan Hashim, the Country Director of APAD Sri Lanka, to deliver the opening remarks.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a very warm welcome. Gathered here we are from many countries for the APAD International Symposium, themed Climate Smart Collaboration, Accelerating Transition Towards a Climate Resilient Tomorrow. Your Excellency, Mizukoshi Hideaki, Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, we are honored, Your Excellency, to have you as the chief guest today. For a decade, APAD platforms have linked private sector with governments, civil society, humanitarian and development sectors. A nexus for thought for collaborative action. Our sincere gratitude to the people of Japan. Madam Shio Kanda, Country Manager for Maldives, the World Bank. A cordial welcome to you, ma'am. Your presence today as the guest of honor inspires us. Us, more so, you agreeing to the panel, to be in the panel itself. Major General Sudhanta Ranasinghe, Director General Disaster Management Center, a warm welcome to you, sir, as a special guest and a partner to this event. Thank you for the long-standing partnership with APAD, a collaborative partnership in pursuing compatible goals. Chairman APAD, Professor Dr. Kazi Komruzaman, and Ken Onishi, the architect of APAD. Thank you for being here with us today. It is good to have you here and leave us with a lot of ideas, targets, and of course, more work. My colleagues from APAD regional countries, Connecting Business Initiative, from Geneva itself, a UNDP, UN OCHA initiative, who have traveled a very long distance, including Airlink from Singapore. A very warm welcome to Sri Lanka with a traditional greeting as Aiboan. Greetings to our media friends. And News First in particular, our media partner. Thank you for attending in numbers. We do appreciate your presence, and climate journalism does matter. Your role in communicating the verified, impartial, and accurate messages of public importance with regards to climate change and climate crisis cannot come at a better time. Media shapes the public discourse about climate change and how to respond to it. We have two panel discussions today and are fortunate to have panelists with particular eminence and reputation. Reputation in their fields and interest, and of course from the geographical regions. You can look forward to free-flowing and interesting conversations, ably moderated by our partners, CBI, Connecting Business Initiative, and the University of Colombo. Though climate change appears complex, I'm sure they will make it pretty simple. My sincere gratitude to all panelists and the two panel chairs for your commitment and time. Thank you to the audience and those connected virtually. represented by many distinguished guests with an array of experience and wealth of knowledge from private sector, government, diplomatic missions, academia, civil society, humanitarian and development sector. Thank you for your presence, which we cannot achieve our objectives of the event in your absence. Whilst climate change is the most significant challenge we have now to achieve sustainable development goals, we have never had the know-how and solutions available to avert the crisis and create opportunities. Every country will find its own ways to deal with uncertainties and find its best option for low carbon growth and emission reductions. While it may vary, each of our country has them. It's about accelerating those processes through sincere and robust collaboration. Take, for example, Sri Lanka. The 28-kilometer irrigation tunnel, which will be the longest in South Asia upon completion. This tunnel is the backbone of a 65-kilometer conveyance system to divert water from reservoirs to the northern dry zone. The original program was launched in 1970s under the Mahavali Development Program, which was interrupted due to the internal conflict. 900 million cubic meters of water will be transferred annually through canals, reservoirs, and tunnels to the water-scarce north and northwest. Farmers who traditionally practice single rice cultivation will have a second diversified crop and could cater to competing consumption demands. Furthermore, it will meet daily peak energy demands through releases to hydropower. 43,000 hectares of arid land, that is the size of Barbados, could be cultivated during the 2 growing seasons by providing irrigation to 25,000 families in the region. 100,000 families in 13 divisional secretariats will benefit from improved access to potable water, addressing the lack of safe drinking water, a major cause for poverty and kidney disease. Let's not allow rainwater to flow into the sea. It's not about fighting climate change, but to seek to take advantage of the change and not to be the cause. We need to prioritize and accelerate the development process. Collaborative platforms are thus required, and it should be inclusive, unique, and of course accessible. In our recent APAD Civil Military Search and Rescue Training exercise, senior military officers expressed their intent and concerns on climate change. Military emission reduction targets should be included in the national climate strategies. Both arms production and military supply chain plays a significant role. Military should be a part to climate solution. While low carbon warfare may be a challenge, militaries will begin to address their carbon footprints. Likewise, corporates require to have a climate strategy with reasonable integrity, a commitment to decarbonize, instead only to seek to offset emissions by paying others to avoid or remove carbon on their behalf. Corporate climate leadership is more important than ever. Considering climate change and other sustainability risks in decision making leads to better returns over the long run. Acting on climate change makes good business sense. Corporate climate and sustainable actions can become the primary source of competitive advantage. It does indeed pay to be green. Donors and the humanitarian world should look at reducing the complexity in disaster response and recovery. Resiliency funding can be an option for communities to build resilience against climate change fueled extreme weather, so that we don't have to spend as much to help communities recover. a business model where every dollar we spend in resilience will save us $6 to $10 in response and recovery costs. Multi-hazard early warning systems could reduce losses up to 60%. This is cost-effective way of protecting people and assets, which provides a tenfold return on investment. Finally, being a member of the UNICEF Business Council, I am mandated to promote the rights of children. Climate crisis is a child right crisis. Children bear the greatest burden of climate change. Children and youth can be catalysts for climate action, and we need to include them. The future is in our hands, and let's make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Harsh. Moving forward, join me in welcoming the chairman of APAD International, a true advocate for disaster resilience and humanitarian efforts, Professor Dr. Kazi Kwamruzaman. I kindly invite you, sir, to address the gathering.
Honorable Chief Guest, His Excellency Mr. Mizo Koshi, Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, Guest of Honor Ms. Shio Kanda, World Bank's Country Manager for Maldives and Sri Lanka, respected guests, participants, representative of private sector, and media. Ladies and gentlemen, a wonderful morning to all of you. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to today's APAD Sri Lanka organized APAD International Symposium 2023 on climate-smart collaboration, accelerating transit towards a climate-resilient tomorrow. APAD, Asia-Pacific Alliance of Disaster Management, is an organization working for the people of Asia-Pacific region. Naturally, APAD very much concerned about climate change and its effect on the people of this area. Theme of today's symposium reflects that concern. Climate change is a very real and alarming threat to the existence of humankind and this world. The Earth's climate is changing at a drastic rate, and far-reaching impacts are catastrophic. We have seen that in our short video just a few minutes ago. The cause of this alarming change is human activity. Regardless of the fact whether we accept or deny, undoubtedly, each one of us is somehow responsible for this miserable state of our planet. One of the major contributors to the climate change is our burning fossil fuels for transportation and power supply that leads to large emission of carbon dioxide into the environment, which traps heat and contributes to the global warming. Our planet is just getting warmer and warmer, and evidence is all around us. The warm temperature causing glacier to melt and thus increasing the level of which ultimately lead floods. It's very interesting to know that this melting of glacier releasing unnamed bacteria and viruses in the world now, and we don't know what the effects will be in the future. One disaster leads to another, and the whole chain of nature disrupted, causing great loss of biodiversity and life. Another cause is the catastrophic deforestation. The cleaning of forests inevitably impacts the climate. However, all hope is not lost. Even now, there is a time to take the right action and slow this adversity and even reverse the effects. Today's International Symposium aiming to address that very issue. Today we have gathered here international experts, policymakers, activists, media, stakeholders, and development partners. Now it lies collective responsibility of all of us, even by doing our small bits, to take the appropriate action and save our planet. Our deliberation in the symposium will provide us a roadmap for the future. Thank you very much for your patience hearing. Wish you all a very successful symposium. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. We are privileged to have with us the Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Mr. Mizukoshi Hideki, an individual whose diplomatic acumen and support have strengthened the collaboration between nations, fostering an environment where joint efforts can truly make a difference. I kindly invite you, sir, to deliver the keynote speech.
Mr. Kensuke Onishi, Chief Executive Officer, APAD International Japan, Professor Dr. Kazi Kamruzaman, Chairman, APAD International Bangladesh, Mr. Firuzan Hashim, Country Director, APAD Sri Lanka, Major General Sudanda Ranasinghe, Director General Disaster Management Center, Ms. Chio Kanda, Country Manager for Maldives and Sri Lanka World Bank, Dr. Ananda Marawatri, Advisor to the President of Sri Lanka, representatives of the UN agencies, private sector, government, media, and related stakeholders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Ayubowan, Wanakam, and good morning, and Ohayo gozaimasu. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to address APAD International Symposium for the second time following last year's symposium, which was a very successful one. And I would like to extend my warm greetings for this symposium today. Firstly, I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations on the 10th anniversary of APAD. In February this year, a grand commemorative forum was held in Japan with the presence of Mr. Shunsuke Takei, State Minister for Foreign Affairs, marking a significant milestone in the activities of APAD. Japan has been supporting APAD's activities since its inception, and APAD has implemented a number of programs, including emergency disaster relief and COVID-19 activities. APAD's platform for disaster relief is a pioneering initiative originating from Japan, bringing innovation to disaster-prone Asia, and it stands as a testament to a decade of dedicated work of APAD. Last year, I had the opportunity to observe a training of life-saving organized by APAD. It was a very impressive training. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to everyone who has been involved in the establishment and activities of APAD. The theme of this symposium focuses on addressing climate change, a critical issue common to all humankind that cannot be postponed. At the G7 Hiroshima summit held in Japan in May this year, there was a great deal of discussion about the need to integrally address climate change, biodiversity, and environmental pollution. Also, there was much discussion about the need to integrally address energy security, climate crisis, and geopolitical risks in pursuit of the common global goal of net zero emissions. Japan is the only G7 country from Asia and is in a position to know well the situation of Asian countries which are part of the global south. As energy demand rises, greenhouse gas emissions tend to rise in these growing Asian countries. And Japan has been calling for measures to support emission reductions that take into account the circumstances of these Asian countries. At the G7 Hiroshima summit chaired by Japan, the G7 countries agreed on Japan's view that diverse paths in accordance with each country's energy situation and other conditions will lead to a common goal of net zero emissions. Furthermore, Japan also put forward a strong message of promoting green transformation, GX, globally towards the integrated realization of net zero emissions, nature positive economy, and circular economy, while ensuring economic growth and energy security. We will hold the Tokyo GX Week Ministerial Plenary Session at the end of this month. Japan will continue to play a leading role in the transition from a social economy dependent on fossil fuels to one centered on clean energy, as well as in the realization of green transformation that connects emission reductions to economic growth. Japan also promotes greenhouse gas reduction through cooperation with developing countries, promoting the introduction of the joint credit mechanism, which allows both countries of the agreement to share the benefits of emission reductions. Last October, Japan signed a JCM agreement with Sri Lanka. Actually, I signed it with my counterpart, contributing to greenhouse gas reduction and absorption efforts and sustainable development in Sri Lanka through the implementation of advanced decarbonization technologies, products, systems, services, and infrastructure originating from Japan. This symposium is indeed a timely one given these circumstances. The world is now faced with complex crises, including the climate crisis and the pandemics. In addition to the invasion of Ukraine, and it is true that emerging and developing countries and people in vulnerable circumstances in the global south have been significantly affected by these crises. Unless we listen to the voices of these countries and people and show our commitment to cooperation on a wide range of urgent issues while respecting human dignity and human security through a people-oriented approach, our appeal for fully defending the international order based on a free and open Indo-Pacific may sound like a slogan without substance. Considering the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Sri Lanka due to the economic crisis, Japan has provided approximately $100 million in grant assistance since last year. This assistance encompasses not only the provision of food, medicines, and fuel, but also support in various fields that contribute to sustainable development in Sri Lanka, including the tourism sector and the empowerment of women. Just last month, in July, I visited the northern province and provided additional, it was in August. I visited the northern province and provided additional funding for mine clearance activities by the local NGO to facilitate resettlement in conflict-affected areas. We also extended support for improving the living conditions of vulnerable people in areas where resettlement is progressing, including the provision of ambulance and mobile clinic and the construction of school buildings. Regarding the IMF program and debt restructuring for Sri Lanka, Japan has been actively involved in leading the debt restructuring negotiation. We have also been actively supporting the social and economic reforms committed by the Sri Lankan government under the IMF program, including public finance reform, power sector reform, and anti-corruption measures. We will continue to play an important role, not only as a creditor nation, but also as a long-standing friend of Sri Lanka, working closely with the IMF, World Bank, ADB, and UN agencies and other development partners. In conclusion, I wish you a very successful symposium, and I sincerely hope that today's discussions will generate more initiatives and collaboration towards sustainable development in the Global South, in particular in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, sir. That marks the conclusion of the ceremonial session. We will now transition into one of the most anticipated segments of the event. I kindly request the distinguished dignitaries, Ms. Chio Kanda, Major General Sudanta Ranasinghe, Mr. Kensuke Onishi, to remain on stage with us. We are excited and honored to set the stage for our first panel discussion on the theme, Scaling Up Climate Smart Solutions, Moving from Innovation to Implementation. I now invite our panel chair for the session, Ms. Riza Neri, Global Network Coordination Lead from the Connecting Business Initiative, Geneva, Switzerland. As this segment promises to be a dynamic discussion, allow me to introduce and invite the panelists for the session. Ms. Chio Kanda, Country Manager for the Maldives and Sri Lanka, the World Bank. Major General Sudanta Ranasinghe, Director General, Disaster Management Center. Dr. Rohan Fernando, Executive Director, 8 Conspans PLC. Mr. Denver De Silva, Senior Vice President, Virtusa Corporation, Director, Virtusa Private Limited. Mr. Kensuke Onishi, Chief Executive Officer, APAD International. Dr. Nelum Vitana, Group Manager, Food Safety and Nutrition, Cargill Ceylon PLC. Over to you, Ms. Riza.
Sound. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, and Major General Ranasinghe here reminded me that we were actually here together last year. So it's always a great pleasure to see everyone convened in opportunities like this one. And we're very thankful for Hush and the team from the Asia Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management Sri Lanka, as well as friends from Japan, Indonesia, the Philippines, Bangladesh, and colleagues from UN agencies as well as international organizations for bringing us together. But thank you, most of all, for the participants for joining us today in this conversation on scaling up climate smart solutions. So really moving from innovations to implementation. And we're here to talk about a very important topic, which is climate change, as we've seen in the video that was shown a while ago, and how it affects countries with limited resources and infrastructure, particularly in the developing world. Yesterday, I saw on social media a post by the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, or UNDRR, a post that says, "This summer is a summer of records." And why? They gave us the following record-breaking statements. So July was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth. Wildfires in Hawaii have been the deadliest in over a century in the US, as we have seen in the news. Beijing recorded its heaviest rainfall since 140 years ago, and temperatures topped 50 degrees in Morocco for the first time. And here in Sri Lanka, the southern region is currently facing significant drought conditions. And these changes in weather are not just local problems, as we all know, but these are also global issues. Now, it is scary, but let's also take a moment to recognize the efforts of nations like Vanuatu and other countries in the Pacific. They successfully convinced world leaders to set up a climate loss and damage fund to help countries that are suffering from the impacts of climate change. And even though they are not the main contributors of the problem. So this is an example of how practical action, but at the same time, collective voices can lead to changes even at the global level. So I've been told that the goal for our discussion today is to have fun, but at the same time, to make it very simple. So we want to inspire smart solutions and really have a conversation with everyone in the room here. We want to encourage not only policymakers, but also individuals like you and myself to take meaningful steps towards a climate resilient and sustainable future. And this is also what we believe at the Connecting Business Initiative, or CBI, which is founded by the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or OCHA, and the United Nations Office, or the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP. By having businesses working with governments, with international organizations, we'll really make a difference. So in the next hour and a half, you'll hear about the practical ideas and initiatives from the expert panelists that we have here with me, and how we can make a real difference in the fight against climate change. So again, thank you for being part of this conversation, and we will begin. And I will start with Ms. Chiyukanda, who is the country manager for Maldives and Sri Lanka from the World Bank. Chiyo, as one of the world's leading international financial institutions, or IFI, the World Bank has this unique lens or perspective. Could you share practical examples of how the organization, the bank, supports developing nations when it comes to climate financing opportunities? So really, how can climate finance help countries, such as Sri Lanka, when it comes to building resilience and really tackling the challenges of climate change? So over to you. There you go.
Hello? It's working?
That is right.
Good morning. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the organizers for inviting me. It's a very honor and pleasure to be here. As a World Bank, as you said, one of the leading international finance institutions, we have been really making utmost efforts in, first of all, working on development. That's our core mandate for world free of poverty. But we've been striving to do it in a sustainable manner, so that it's inclusive for the people, as well as the environmentally and socially, economically sustainable. And recently, we have even renewed our mission from just a vision as world free of poverty to add world free of poverty in a livable planet. So that is really a reflection of the thinking and the vision that the making it a livable planet is an essential part, an existential issue for development and the economic development of the countries. And in terms of climate financing, we have been working in many ways. Notably that, for instance, we've been kind of administering, managing the two financing sources, Clean Technology Fund and the Strategic Climate Fund. The Clean Technology Fund is to support the innovative approaches as well as to scale up such challenges and specific sectoral issues. And Strategic Climate Fund is to more scale, finance the more larger scale climate actions and investments and projects. And also the World Bank is an interim trustee of the Global Green Fund. So, and in addition to that, of course, there are other sources and other means and the innovative approaches that we've been supporting our client countries, such as the green bond, cat bond, as well as the disaster risk insurance and so forth. And then also there are a lot of collaboration and leveraging of the private financing using and collaborating with our funding and leveraging that. And we continue to do so, not only in Sri Lanka, but globally with our client countries. And then also the important part is to kind of mobilize and help mobilize the more global funding, private resources, and then in a collaboration to raise more resources. But in addition to those raising more funds, I think it is important that we shouldn't forget how to better and best use the even existing resources in two ways. One is not just focusing on the specific climate-oriented financing, but basically mainstream climate agenda in the entire financing we have. So what we have done as our bank actually we've been doing for years is to screen every single project that goes to the board for climate co-benefit. Not just the obvious candidates like environment or disaster risk management, infrastructure and energy, but also education, health, financial sector, or any project. 100% of the projects and even budget support have been screened and scored in terms of what is the expected climate co-benefit, so that we realize and also maximize the benefits of all the existing resources to maximize contribution. And then that we recently stepped up to even add from this finance year to even add another aspect of how they are Paris aligned. That's another screening. So I think it is important to look every intervention, every investment from that climate lens, what and how we can contribute. And the second part is the collaboration across development, different financing agencies. I think we have a lot of good piloting, investment and projects are done, but can we even make it better and higher impact by, can maybe like collaborating, making complementary, creating synergy and scaling up, right? So there are a lot of still I wouldn't call it a silo, but then there's a lot of discrete agenda and discrete projects are going on, but we can have a better and higher impact by collaborating even better.
Now, I like what you said about really honing on our abilities using existing resources. So it's not just about asking money, but really leveraging on what is already there in a more innovative and creative manner. So really scaling up the existing climate solutions that are already there, which is really the theme of the discussion. I also like what you pointed about mainstreaming everything, that climate lens, that disaster risk reduction lens in everything that we do. And with that, I'll go to the Director General, Rana Singh over here. And again, thanks for reminding me that last year, it was a totally different topic. But right now, we do need to talk about this threat that's right before us, which is climate change. Now, with the Director General, with the severe drought conditions in the country, particularly in some areas where you see there are drier conditions, and then you have heavy rains in some. How do you think is Sri Lanka learning about the impacts of these extreme weather events and taking steps to actually reduce the risks? And your agency, the DMC, plays a very vital role here. So can you share with us some of the strategies or approaches that are already included in existing frameworks such as the National Disaster Management Plan and even the National Emergency Operation Plan in the country, and how can everyone be part of this in tackling these challenges?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Your question had, I think, about three parts. One is the understanding the situation, then the strategies developed, and how we are working out our plans to mitigate the situations. Let me start with what we are facing today. Last 2 months, we had severe drought, and then connected with that, from a week before, we started heavy downpour coming down. Sri Lanka is a four-season country. We have the first winter monsoons like February, March, April. Then we get the southwestern monsoon. Most probably it's June, July, August, and goes into September. Then second winter monsoon, October, November, September, October, November, and then we get the December, January, February northeastern monsoon. This is a well-known factor. We all know about it. And if you ask even a child in a school, will know we are the four seasons. But look what has happened today. If you go into statistics during last 2 months, 61,000 acres of agricultural land were devastated. And government is paying compensation on these effects that's connected with drought. Then sudden downpour came in. It was a delayed onslaught of southwestern monsoon. And as per my situation report this morning, there are about 8 districts affected. Over 100 families had faced certain difficulties, and we are providing them with welfare and other facilities for their livelihoods. Then again, the other side of the coin is, in north and east, still I am distributing drinking water using about 50 to 60 buses. That also amounts into a lot of money. Now, coming on to the understanding this situation, these are effects coming from the global scenarios, regional scenarios, and Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is such a small country. You can drive across north to south and south to west just in hours. It doesn't take much long. But still you see, in that such a small, tiny enclave, we have one side massive drought, one side floods and early warnings and red alerts of landslides. We have given red alerts to one district and amber alerts to 3 districts on landslide situations. Now, how best are we prepared, and how best have we been planning our activities and action onto this kind of changes? It has to be a collaborative effort coming from global, regional, and how we apply whatever these informations and indication we gathered from those global and regional scenarios, then ensure we put all these statistics and data with our past experience and data available with us, and develop kind of a artificial intelligence onto a modeling system. And then we work out our institutional planning and institutional action plans. It goes into agriculture, it goes into drinking water, it goes into releasing of waters and all sorts of activities. And we have here today a lot of business entrepreneurs, then private sector, government sector, everybody. Here everybody has their own responsibilities. And if I ask most of these gentlemen here today, how many of you have at least a simple, small disaster management section within your organization, analyzing your own vulnerabilities and then gathering the data and information available with disaster management center, the med department, the irrigation department, the Mahavali and the agrarian, all these areas, and how are you incorporating these possible vulnerabilities into your business plans? And have you ever made any attempts to gather these global, regional, free data deliveries, as well as there are paid data deliveries, and have you developed your own organizational disaster management section for your business progression and development in case of any disasters? There may be, but if I take the government sector, we saw what happened last 2 months. So these are the areas where we should work and we should practically get ourselves involved. And it has to be kind of a collective effort, because all these sectors, now though the disaster management has done 10 sector evaluation and 10 sector plans for these vulnerabilities, I'm sure most of these sectors are still not using these plans what we have given to them. The unfolding of these activities are generally how it happens is that Med department gets their warnings. When Med department gets their early warnings and intimations, they have their paid information generation, then they have their normal information gathering. Then they put all the past experiences and data what they have. Then they develop their mathematical studies on that, and then they give us disaster management center their predictions. Then connected with these predictions, the irrigation department gives us the water levels and the levels of the rivers and their cascades, the possibilities of minor floods, serious floods. So these effects are being delivered to us. Then similarly, Mahavali gives us the reservoir levels, then we contact with the electricity board, then we give the energy and the power source and how they do their deliveries and their continuation of activities. Then agriculture sector, most importantly, that's the water management and the agriculture management, the harvest management. For a simple example, now they say from October, November, December, they are going the predictions given by the Met Department, we are going to have rains. So now this is the time where we make our action plans, at least can go for 2 hours in Maha season.
Right.
So one with the rainwater, second one with the water collected in the reservoirs. So first harvesting has to be done with rainwater. That is depending on the action plan, or working out to action plan with the predictions given by this Met Department.
The Met agencies.
Then I'm sure Ministry of Agriculture is working on that, and then irrigation will be working on their rivers, and Mahavali will be working on their reservoirs on this process. So this is all should be connected. It's a bottom-up action plans and top-down information delivery, because at the end it's that farm who is in the paddy field, the peasant villager who is there, who will ask for drinking water and ask for money for their efforts and their harvest. Then it comes to the businesses, the safety and security of their businesses, their business continuation, and everything gathers around, and ultimately it will come to the national economy. Again, one more point. Now, all these things which get connected with another area where the school sector and the tourism sector and the hotel sector. The school sector is another important area where how we incorporate the subject of disaster management into the curriculum of school sector and make the children understand, because the children are the best modem of message delivery to the parents and the adults. Sometimes adults don't understand this. So we use that method also. Then tourism, there are major areas. And last point, I would say, in Sri Lanka, we have identified disasters, that is most commonly the floods, the landslides, Then we have high winds, the cyclones, lightning strikes, and worst case scenario, but very rare, it's tsunami.
I see.
Now, all these organizations, business enterprises, the business continuity plans, the public-private partnerships, the government engagement, everything must ensure that they are aware of the possibilities within their own areas of responsibility.
Right.
So that's where we get into that, I think. My
The
time is
three, no, that's, and I appreciate the comprehensiveness because this is the disaster management center. So you have that lens that will say we really need to get our acts together. So it's not just the government doing our thing, the DMC, but also making sense at the individual level and at the same time at the corporate level. So it's I like how you challenged every one of us here. Where are our action plans, or what are we really doing concretely when it comes to contributing to making sure that we are ready when it comes to the impacts of climate change and other potential threat. Now, I'm going to finish World Bank, the DMC, and APAD, and I'm going to turn over to you, to our group, if you have any questions before I move on to the private sector. So allow me to move to Mr. Kensuke Onishi here. And again, APAD has been celebrating milestones and achievements of not just in Sri Lanka, but with all the other global networks, such as in Indonesia, the Philippines, and in Bangladesh. Now, for APAD, you have seen several examples of innovative disaster response approaches in different countries, and now even expanding into the Pacific. An area which we all know is increasingly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. We've seen what we can do. We've heard from Chio, from the Director General, what needs to be done. But I want to ask, what do you think are challenges? Sort of the obstacles or hiccups, if we may say that do you foresee when implementing these innovative approaches in such climate prone areas. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. As you know, APAD was founded 10 years ago mainly for mitigation of disaster and also disaster response. But we are moving forward from just disaster management to climate change. And then I would like to show these new pictures of our ships, together with Peace Winds originating from a Japanese NGO implementing together with APAD. We prepared 2 ships and already operating. And then the first purpose was responding to disaster, of course. But also, we like to utilize these 2 ships for more, investigation on the real climate change in a real field of each area. So we have different situation and phenomena in different areas. As you said,
Right.
the most vulnerable areas of maybe growth must or should be in small islands in ocean, in Pacific Ocean or Indian Ocean, or including maybe archipelago of Indonesia, Philippines, and maybe Sri Lanka, and also southern part of delta of Bangladesh, may be affected so much by the big climate change. So, between academic area and also acting people, it's a very big gap. And then, so we would like to, connect each other, and sometimes offering some facilities and some small funds for academic areas, so as to take them into our boats, ships, and then taking them to the Pacific Islands, very isolated islands, 2,000 kilometers away from our country, for example, like southwest islands of Palau, for example. So only twice in a year, the ships are coming from Palau, main island. And then, so nobody knows what's going on there. And even epidemic diseases is changing due to the climate change. So we need to accumulate the real data of the field by watching, monitoring by the eyes. So that's our we are focusing on from disaster response organization to climate change organization. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I like how you pointed out that there is a gap. So that's one way of tackling this challenge head on, that there is a gap between the way we speak, the approaches from the business community, from the international agencies, the academe, the UN. And I want to bridge this gap first by bringing or roping in our participants. So before I move on to our panelists representing the business community to hear their point of view, can I see, maybe let's see if anyone would want to have or help us bridge this gap further. If you have any questions or feedback thus far from our panelists. Well, let's give you a few more minutes to think about your questions because I'm sure that there are a lot. So, but feel free to be part of this conversation because again, as Ken said, it is about bridging this gap between understanding how climate change really impacts all of us. Now, I'm going to move now to the business community and I'll start with Dr. Rohan Fernando from Icahn Spence. And I wanted to, I wanted to ask from your perspective, so we have the World Economic Forum Global Risk Report for this year. And it says there that the biggest risk that we'll face in the next decade is actually not doing enough when it comes to addressing the impacts of climate change. How can green trade and do you think investments help countries such as Sri Lanka, but at the same time other countries in Asia and the Pacific, those especially dealing with that, to combat the effects of climate change? Please, over to you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Before I respond to this question, I'd like to thank Mr. Farizan Hashim for inviting me onto this panel. The question was twofold. One is mitigation of climate change and adaptation to climate change or building resilience against climate change, if I'm correct. Before I respond to these two questions, I'd like to comment on some of the panelists, what they said. The head of the World Bank, who mentioned that we are very good at, building projects, but not looking at their feasibility, and then thereafter trying to mitigate the risk. And the Major General from the National Disaster Centers spoke about the disparity in weather and so many other phenomena that is happening in Sri Lanka. Something that took my mind is about 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a lady, I think she was the head of the UNDP, said that, we are no longer talking of global warming or global warning, but more global burning. I cannot agree with her more, because today what is happening, not only in Sri Lanka, is global burning. And the statistics that was shared by the moderator truly endorses that phenomena that is happening all over the world. And it has hit this country as well. And that's why all of us are gathered here, discussing about climate change and its impact on the economy. I don't think many of us 25 years ago would have ever thought that we would be seated here with so many eminent personalities talking about climate change and how it has come to hit us. To me, the biggest priority is awareness and appreciation for climate change, not just for the people in this room, but like the Major General said, at school level, at grassroots level, that everybody appreciates that if we do not do anything, meaningfully about climate change is going to devastate our country and our global nations. Mitigation of climate change, to my mind, is a misnomer because you do something wrong and then you take action to mitigate it. To my mind, we should be little more proactive. And I'm happy to say that at Atkins Spence, one of the criteria we look at is that we build better before, so that we will look at projects that will not need for us to be mindful of the environment or something that would contribute to the detriment of the environment, because we first look at those risks and then develop the project. At least that's what we are getting at. We have a very, I would say, comprehensive disaster risk reduction strategy. We have a disaster risk reduction committee that cuts across all our businesses. As you know, we are a highly diversified company. And we are very mindful of this because unless we adapt to climate change in a meaningful way, climate change will destroy businesses. And in probably 25 years' time, we will look back and see how stupid all of us have been, that we have not acted proactively. Having said that, I think the moderator spoke about the data which the ADB had shared, and this is again completely dependence on fossil fuels. And what is the strategy that every one of us has made to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel is a question that we need to all ask ourselves. I think we need to invest more and more on renewable energy. Even at this very moment, Sri Lanka is still not committed to doing that. I like to, again reiterate the fact that we are a country that is very good at policies, but we are a country that fails to implement the policies that have been enunciated or the policies that have been developed. Huge gap in everything, and that's why we are in this situation. We don't have a legal framework that ensures that the agencies that are responsible for implementing policies of climate change, implementing policies of environmental preservation, have the teeth to take action against companies or people that do business that is harmful to the environment. For the last 25 years, we've been talking of people cutting down forest. For the last 25 years, we know that people cut the very forest even in the Singharaja, and all of us we stand aghast when we see what is reported in the newspapers. But the action that is being taken against all those who contribute to the detriment of this planet has much left to be desired. And I'm glad that we have a Major General who has the clout and the teeth to head this disaster management unit, so that we'll at least ensure that we have a very strong arm to ensure that people who do things that are harmful to the environment are dealt with in the most forceful way. Having said that, businesses like ours, in order to mitigate climate change, we must look at how do we reduce our operational costs.
Right.
How do we reduce the impact of using fossil fuel versus renewable energy? Are we investing more in renewable energy? How do we improve the domestic income of people who are in the lesser communities? Another area that I feel that we can contribute to mitigating climate change is to invest, to encourage foreign investors to come and invest in areas of renewable energy. Sri Lanka is a land of opportunity, provided the red tape is removed, provided the roadblocks are removed, and provided there is a level playing field. I can tell you from our own examples, there are many people who want to come and invest in this country, particularly in renewable energy. Right. But there must be a level playing field. They must have confidence in the nation that whatever they invest in, that their money is protected and that there's transparency. I'm sure our colleagues from Japan, they will be the first to come because, I mean, that's a country that is so well up on renewable energy and similar areas. I'm sure there's a lot of financial support as well. Today we are talking of green financing. We are talking of green infrastructure. There again, I can give you an example, pardon me for being, blowing our own trumpet. About 40 years ago, my company, Atkins Spence, built Kandalama. At that time, nobody thought what it was. It was the first LEED certified hotel in the world. And that itself is an example of building a green infrastructure, of building products that are contributing to the environment. And even in a marketing sense, this is something that has been a strategy of differentiation, and the product has sold itself. And from an economic sense, I mean, it has been an economic success story. So I would also imagine that not only the private sector, in collaboration with the government sector, we must also look at economic diversification, meaning diversify into businesses, diversify into products that contribute towards mitigating climate change, rather than contribute towards products that give you a higher IRR or return on investment. That's important too, but try to create that balance, because if every one of us contributes to collaboration, I'm sure we will be able to mitigate the effect of climate change in a much more sustainable manner. Then only we will be truly a sustainable nation. Then only we will be truly sustainable business enterprises from the private sector. Right. Your next question was about adapting to climate change. Am I right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So in adapting to climate change, again, I think I answered it partly at the beginning. They're getting into businesses that do not contribute to harming the environment. If you make a conscious effort to ensure that you don't get into businesses that are harmful to the environment, then there is no need to protect the environment, because you have inbuilt mechanisms that protect the environment. And I can tell you that we at Atkins Spence, I can't tell you we are doing everything right, but we are making a concerted effort to, as I said, build before, so that we don't have to step back and ensure that we protect the environment. At the moment, we are working towards net zero, so that by 2030, that will be our goal. We are not looking at carbon neutral, because we feel that working toward net zero is the much more sustainable and comprehensive way to contribute, to make our contribution to this issue of climate change. So having said that, if there are any other questions, I will contribute at a later time.
Those are very practical examples and commitments. Net zero commitment, the LEED certification. So really benchmark-worthy practices from private sector, from Atkins Spence. And I'm going to defer to Chio and Ken over here on the question from Dr. Rohan on investment. So getting more people, donors, and other partners, financing institutions to really notice how they can help. And I'll go back to the Director General Rana Singh here over here on the legal framework. But let me first finish our private sector voices over here, and I'll move to Dr. Nilum over here, because I think it was the Director General Rana Singh who pointed out that there are vulnerable people who will be most affected by the impacts of climate change. And when we say vulnerable people, groups, women are definitely included, women, children, and others who are considered at most at risk in communities. But particularly for women, we know that women play a significant role in global food production, global and local food production systems, and they can unfortunately face increased vulnerability when it comes to the impacts of climate change. What, from Cargill's approaches and projects and activities that you have been telling me a while ago, what do you think can businesses introduce and advocate for everyone here, from governments, policymakers, to make sure that when we talk about women and the local and global food production system, that we can make our approaches more accessible and also targeting the most vulnerable in the communities? Over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's on.
Yeah, now it's on. Yeah, thank you very much. So before I answer your question, I should say, like, I'm representing private sector as well. So I'm representing Cargill Ceylon PLC, which we have like so much of manufacturing facilities which might affect environment, which we say we have 3 dairy facilities, we have like meat processing facilities, so we have so much of food processing facilities, as well as we have like 530 plus Cargill supermarkets. So going there, like what Dr. Rohan said, as well as Major General, the disaster management, what emphasized, before answering your question, I should say, yes, like this is like no one else did it. We did it. I did it. Like we did this to environment. We can't fingerprint anyone else, okay, because of y'all you did this. And each individual person as well as business unit caused this environmental change. So there's no doubt about it. So what we can do for that, like I'm happy to say, like Cargill Ceylon PLC, like we monitor our carbon footprint, like all our supermarket 530 plus, as well as all manufacturing facilities from 2021. We monitor our gas emission, and like we have taken so much of precaution to bring it down. At the same time, like we do renewable energy, we try to reduce energy usage, water usage, that sort of a initiative are there. So here, mainly like one person or one company cannot do that. Everyone, each individual, even including private sector, they should take initiative and carry out. And same time, like sometimes the private sector, of course, is profit driven. But still, when you do this sustainable way of business, like reduce energy, reduce water usage, that ultimately benefit you as well to improve your profit, because you, end of the day, you pay your electricity bill, you have to pay your water bill. Likewise, not only that, like in long term, there's a lot of benefits you get from that. So awareness, of course, everyone's response is very important. At school level, yes, each one of us is responsible. So answering your question, yes, because of this climate change and all, there are a lot of vulnerable people, especially even women. So what we can do, like as what Cargills try to do something about that is, before that, I would say, like we directly work with farmers, so much of farmers, which like, let's say fruits and vegetables, about 5,000 farmers. And then when you go to dairy, it's about 15,000 farmers. So we work with them to get their goods. So this climate change, of course, is affect a lot to these farmers. And when we say farmers, Sri Lankan farmers are compared to developed countries' farmers, our farmers are very like a low income farmers, and their knowledge level compared to developed countries is very low. So there's a big role as a private sector we should do to develop them. So that, like one party cannot do that alone, and it will be collaborative work, like of course agriculture ministry is there, and then as a private sector, Cargill is there, like different organizations, they can do something together. So simple example, what we have done some time back, we call it Gap Village. So it's FAO Gap Village. What that mean is, like we work with 500, this is just a one initiative I'm telling in detail. So about 570 farmers, we work with FAO and Agriculture Ministry to why we call it gap villages, like that is we provide, this is modern agriculture, because right now in Sri Lanka the agriculture sector is like most of the people doesn't use modern agriculture, and that's why climate affect them. Because the main season, as all we have 4 seasons, the main season is Yala and Maha, so totally depend on the rainwater. But when you do smart agriculture or agriculture mechanization, so you can get a better, you can overcome the climate change bit. So what in this gap village, what we have done is we have awareness is from Kargis side, and then financial support, FAOs involved in that. And what we have given is this, we selected these farmers which have about quarter-acre cultivation, especially even special attention given to female, the housewives as well, who can do the farmers. Because when you do this mechanical farming, you don't need hard labor.
Right.
So even a lady, the housewife, can manage this farming land. So what we have done is this drip irrigation, polythene mulching, and net, that sort of a modern agriculture technique was given. And we have seen like better improvement. The productivity was about 20 to 40% increase. Ultimately, finally, that is what the farmers need, the money. Like, so otherwise it will be not sustainable. So although with all this mechanical thing, other thing is gap village mean good, gap mean good agriculture practice. So what we get from gap is like right now the biggest problem in the country is the excess use of agrochemicals as well as water, too much of water. So that also again affect the environment, like the excess fertilizer as well as the water usage of excess water that affect the environment. So in this project, with the drip irrigation, the water is given like to the amount that crop need, not the excess. Same time the fertilizer. So fertilizer usage is reduced up to about 40 to 60%, which is a big amount. That means like our farmers use excessive fertilizer, which is a cost to them as well. So when we use this modern agriculture with the drip irrigation and the mulching and the polytunnel, so the usage of agriculture is much less, and the productivity increase, the better income, and the better good livelihood of this rural community, the food security, like they have enough money to get the better nutrition. So that's sort of a project like we're done with 570. And if like awareness of course is important, similarly, if we can expand this sort of a project, because there's a lot of work behind this to knowledge them, and main thing is they should see the results, because with that, since the Kargis, we have like so much of a 530 plus supermarket, and we have a ready-made market. So it's easy for them, so we purchase, okay, you produce this, and you have a higher productivity, and we purchase it, and we sell, so you get the money. So that sort of a arrangement will work very well. At the same time, like I'm adding another thing to that, like when you do climate smart agriculture, like you can get the crop like throughout the year. It's easier. But what happened, then affordability is better. You can give it to a better price. But what happened right now is because of like one season, one crop maybe, let's say onion or like a tomato, it's so cheap. And that means then the farmer get less income. He don't get a good income from his crop. But like one season, the product price is very high. Of course, yes, then farmer might get better income, but still the productivity is less. That's why they get that higher income. But then the consumer, which is majority of Sri Lankan population, which is, I think, 1/4 of Sri Lankan population is under poverty line. So how can they afford for get the better nutrition? So that is the question, and I hope I answer your question. Yeah.
And I'm going to jump in here because it resonates with me what you're speaking about, and to think that this is actually part of Cargill's CSR initiative. And it relates to what Dr. Rohan was saying about, in order for us to really tackle this head on, businesses must do good. So it has to start with the operations, with business models, and now you're giving us a clear example of how CSR initiatives can also help small farmers, women-led enterprises, and so on. Now, from one project to another, I'm gonna rope in Denver here from Virtusa and see if we can actually hear IT solutions, concrete IT solutions, given your leadership and experience really in such a high-profile global information and technology service company. Keen to actually hear from you. What are opportunities here that can leverage, innovative, climate-smart tech solutions? Something very practical that the audience can also relate to.
Thank you very much. First, before I answer your questions, I'd just like to take a moment to thank Hush for inviting me over here for this distinguished gathering and being a part of this eminent panelists. Thank you very much. So I like the fact that we are talking of opportunities, because I think we've had a morning full of challenges, right? So we know there are challenges, right? And let's not get behind that. So if we look at the opportunities, Sri Lanka, a positive factor is that the second largest pool of technology people available in South Asia, second to India.
Just when we were talking about opportunities, huh? Okay. Here we go.
Hello. Yep. Okay, that's nice. So I think the opportunities we have is Sri Lanka is the second largest pool of technology folks, second to India in Sri Lanka. We have a literate population of 98+%. We have one of the largest, most significant mobile digital internet penetration per capita. Fabulous resources. What do we do with this? Right? So the opportunity that we have is Sri Lanka's IT industry, if I may speak from SLASCOM, which is the IT body, and our target is we are today about $1 to $2 billion industry. We want to make it a 5. And in that journey, the amount of opportunities we have is to make Sri Lanka a preferred green IT BPM destination of choice. And we believe we have the capability. Now, being green and is one, but we also want to be a responsible industry. And how do we make it happen? So Virtusa is probably, I'm representing Virtusa from a global sense as well. We are probably in the 98th percentile of the most responsible companies with the EcoVadis rating of gold and so on, reporting into the Carbon Disclosure Project. So what we did was, for Sri Lanka, we've been championing the ESG Sustainability Forum for SLASCOM, and touching upon what our colleagues have said, and I'll refer to them as I go along, is about taking accountability and responsibility, and using this as an opportunity to do what is right. What is your purpose of your company? And in doing so, how do you make it happen? So, flipping back to the initial thought I had of a green IT BPM destination, today we have opportunities to go renewable, and Dr. Fernando pointed this out. The private sector is absolutely willing, and we talk of lack of funds. I don't think we have a lack of funds. We have a lack of implementation, right? The sector is committed to moving from brown power to green power. We as company policies have 20% EV mandatory towards our supply chain. It's about future-proofing your organization. It need not be IT. It can be anything. And your supply chains to survive the climate challenges we have.
Right.
These are times of uncertainty. There is times of volatility, ambiguity, complexity. We've never seen these challenges before. And technology is a great leverage. Look at COVID. COVID was the enabler of one of the greatest global digital transformations that ever happened. None of us ever thought we'll work from home in this fashion. None of us realized. And when you reduce consumption, you bring in operational efficiencies, you bring in profitability. So being sustainable is profitable. There is no question about it. And touching on the earlier aspects that we spoke about, I sort of believe in the 7 Ps principle, which is this cannot be done alone. It's not going to work with 3 of us here. But what will work is a focused effort of private-public partnership with a purpose and a passion for people and planet.
That's 7 Ps.
7 Ps, right? The 7 Ps of that. Now, what does this mean to the audience? It's about being a conscious decision. Are you contributing to the problem or are you contributing to the solution? It's a simple question to ask. And in saying so, it's about flipping the script in every decision we make as a corporate, as a business, or as an individual, from a me and a now decision or a us and a later decision. You don't need to be anyone else. Today, if you take, I was pleased to see no plastic bottles on the table, right? And are we taking a plastic bottle for me and now because I'm thirsty? Or am I using a glass bottle that is washed and clean, which is a us and a later decision? And these are the things. The planet has exhausted its resources. We've plundered it. We need to give back. We need to give back, not just back, we need to rebuild. So it takes us to that whole concept of a us and a later decision. If I may just give you a quick, yeah.
I would like us to take a moment to digest that 7 Ps. And I could see that Dr. Rohan would probably want to come in here. But I'd like to also take a moment to give the audience a chance. All right? Let's make sure that 7 Ps is included in the report, right? So, but I'd like to see our colleagues and friends in the audience taking part of this conversation as well. Because you've heard it, we've heard it, from the World Bank, from APAD, from the DMC, from my colleagues here from the business community. We can't do this alone, and we can't do this panel without you. So let's see. Anyone else from the audience have any burning questions to our panelists thus far? I see the gentleman over there. Can we give him the microphone, please? And then after this Q&A, I'll also go back to Chio, Ken, when it comes to what can we have the donor community or the international community do more to support the existing approaches on quickly on DMC's, the comment on legal frameworks, and we'll start to hear more comments from panelists from the private sector over here. Let's have the gentleman, I think at the 3rd row, please. Yes, go ahead. Introduce yourself briefly to the group.
It's me.
Over there. Okay, I was looking from afar. I'm so sorry. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much for giving the opportunity. I'm Ubay Madhavala. I just want to make a comment and then get to the question. We are talking about climate change. As Sudhanta very rightly said, we have 4 seasons in this country.
Right.
Has the climate changed or the people have changed to change the climate? That's the first question. We know we are talking about innovation to implementation. Just a simple ground example, if you run a vehicle for 25 kilometers in a country, you need 1 hectare of fully grown trees, right? In the meantime, we know that we are talking about disasters. A fully grown tree should be able to absorb 1 gallon of flood water. In the meantime, they emit approximately about 40 gallons of water into the atmosphere.
Right.
Now, we are talking about innovation to the implementation. We have the policies. It's top-driven, as he said. Has this information flown down to the grassroots level? We are talking about farmers being poor. We are talking about they being given compensation. Are they being made aware of the reason for such disasters? So my question is, what are the barriers do we have, and what action could we take to implement that as an organization
right.
to send this message across to the farmer who is supposed to be suffering today?
Now that's a loaded one because the first comment was, yes, we know the climate is changing, but then are the people also changing sufficiently and fast enough to acknowledge this? And then the second question, I'm looking at DMC, but I also want to provide an opportunity for the other panelists here to weigh in from a private sector lens and from an international agency point of view as well. Let's have one more question before I hand it over to the panelists here to respond. Let me
Okay.
just check the room. Yes, sir. I see someone from the second table, the middle row. Microphone, please.
Yeah, it's here.
If you can.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I have a question.
All right.
Yeah, I just want to begin from an appreciation point of view. My name is Richard, and I come from WUSC. I want to begin by appreciating all the panelists. You shared the number of early warning mechanisms that you have in place, and I was so appreciative of that, but also the response mechanism that you've also put in place. Now, I think, this was shared by the Japanese ambassador. He talked about advanced decarbonization technologies that you have in place. I think I wanted some more information on that. What are some of those advanced decarbonization technologies that you have here in Sri Lanka? And then the second question, you shared the number of disasters that you're facing, like the floods, the cyclones, the monsoons. But now my question is, how much of this is Sri Lanka contributing? How much of the greenhouse gases is Sri Lanka contributing that is leading to this climate change? Is it more on Sri Lanka's side, or it's the efforts of different global players that are causing these disasters and Sri Lanka is on the receiving end? I wanted to just know mainly that. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Now, that is a very important point. Yes. Who are the main contributors to this problem, and what's our view on this? Now, I'm going to get another question before I rope in back our panelists. I think the gentleman with the glasses over there. Yes, sir, if you can briefly introduce yourself and then direct your question to the group.
Good morning. I'm Shahid Sangani from Co-Energy. Like your heading says, moving from innovation to implementation. One of the biggest challenges in implementation is financing. And we hear a lot about green financing and climate financing and all that. I've been looking at this area for the last 4 to 5 years. And unfortunately, I don't see much of green financing that is readily available or easily available in Sri Lanka. There's a lot of people, a lot of banks talk about doing green financing, but to me that is not really what the green financing is about. JCM had a program last week, which I think is more on the green financings. My question to the panel is, do we have any numbers about exactly how much of green financing has actually come into the country or is in the pipeline to come in the near future? Because moving from innovation to implementation, one of the biggest challenges is always financing. Yes, it pays to be sustainable. I 100% agree with Denver that yes, this is something that is necessary, but to make that transition, there is some necessity to have some green funding made available. Thank you.
I like that everyone is on theme, that we need to move from innovation to implementation. So panelists, the audience is asking a lot of tough questions. One question is on, we have the policies, but what about implementation? Really on theme. The second one is more about hearing examples on the early warning systems and tech that has been implemented, and maybe you can also have a chat with our panelists after the session, because this is going to be a very long conversation, but more of also what are the how can we make everyone accountable, particularly those countries who are actually contributing to the problem. And the third is challenges when it comes to financing. So really exact numbers, figures on green financing in particular. Panelists, how do we tackle this? Anyone who wants to take the challenge head on?
I don't mind going first.
Go ahead.
So, sir, with regards to implementation, I think we just got to look in the mirror. what have we done differently? So as a company, I'll tell you a few things we did. Probably 5-10 years ago, did we worry about plastic? It was not an issue, right? But as we became a more responsible company, we made conscious decisions to influence our supply chain, which means business. We told them, if you don't reduce your plastic and move away from single-use plastics, next purchase order is not coming. Simple as that. We have told us transport providers, if you don't move to EV by 20%, we don't give you more business. So there are mechanisms if you are committed to do it. We talk about reporting, and Dr. Fernando, you mentioned about forests being cut and accountability and responsibility, right? And that goes to the other question which says, is Sri Lanka responsible? Of course, we are all responsible. And is there global responsibility? Certainly, yes. To what degree, I don't think is really an issue of being measurable on that. It's not blame game, but it's the blame of what are we doing, would be the way I would address it. So going back to the good governance aspects, today, technology is a great social lever of bringing social justice. Equality, equity is coming into place. People can't get away with it. And today, probably forests were being cut down 30 years ago, but we just didn't know about it. So that piece is also coming in. So as corporates, if we are making a conscious decision to implement those policies, I mean, today we have anti-bribery corruption policies. All the people say, you know, politicians, government officials corrupt, and blame game goes. But what are we doing? Do we have a policy in our company? We do. Virtusa has. 98% of the people are certified. So it's about getting that good governance with a commitment. Then action is on ground. So I just thought I'll leave it there.
Go ahead, Dr. Rohan. It's working.
If I may add to what my friend Denver said, again, not to blow our own trumpet, but, you know, Atkins Spence took the lead to invest in the first ever waste-to-energy project in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, really. If not for this investment, today we would have had a stinking Colombo, believe it or not. Because at this power plant of ours, the renewable energy, all the garbage in Colombo is brought and recycled there. We invested something like 13 billion, and we've had severe challenges, which I need not share in this forum, but still we have been committed to renewable energy and done our little bit, as Denver said, without pointing fingers at this one and that one. What I feel is, you know, today we don't need change. Change we should have done 10, 15 years ago. It's a transformation of the business model that we need, so that when you look back of what we will be doing in the future, it doesn't look like the past. Otherwise, we will be talking and harking back at what we should have done, what we did, and not what we would have looked at the future. I'm sure, you know, there are several opportunities. I agree with this gentleman who spoke of green financing. I don't think there are any figures, but I don't think we should give up, because there is green financing out there. I know there is a lot of bureaucratic red tape in obtaining it, but collectively we talk of collaboration. The moderator spoke of collaboration. I'm sure many of us could get together with the banks, with the policymakers, and see how we could obtain or facilitate green financing into this nation, into projects which are sustainable, which contribute to the which don't contribute to, you know, global warming, or what would mitigate climate change. For instance, you know, take the agriculture sector. I think we should dissuade people from going into agriculture that is harmful to the environment. Those are simple things that we could do. So I think what we need is a collaborative effort with the support of the donors. We have the World Bank here. We have the Japanese embassy here. And there are several more foreign entities, I'm sure, who will contribute to taking this whole concept of climate change and mitigation forward, provided, I would say, that there is transparency and very, very clear lines of implementation.
Now, not putting Chio and Ken on the spot here, but from the perspective of the World Bank and, of course, APAD, or Asia Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management, care to weigh in on what Denver and Dr. Fernando have mentioned, as well as our audience, in terms of what needs to be done more?
Okay, thank you. First, I want to respond to the first gentleman's point of how these messages or the innovative actions are maybe or may not be going down to the farmers and all these individuals. So for that one, just to give just few examples of efforts that the World Bank has been doing. We have several projects, including the agriculture projects. One of them is the climate smart, the irrigated agriculture project. That is to support the farmers to learn the climate smart technology and so forth in especially 6 hotspot areas, the regions, as well as to rehabilitate, support the maintenance and planning of the cascade, the water cascade systems, that they can be a better sustainable. And then also that project also created, I think, the first ever training center for climate smart agriculture technologies in North Central, and then that was opened, I think, last year by the minister. And then that is really providing a training and actually training the trainers of the farmers, learning the technologies of the climate smart, the innovative activities. And it's very simple technologies or techniques. And then they go back to their own regions and districts, and then they kind of, their responsibility is to also spread the word and the technologies and techniques. So this is a few of the small examples of the efforts that to get those solutions and awareness down to the farmers level. And then this is only the one example. But then challenge has always been scale up, right? Because there are, as I said earlier, there have been a number of good innovations, pilots, approaches, and projects. But then it never really came to light to us in a nationwide scale up. So how can we work toward that? So in that one, it's really important to not only just looking at the A project level or A financing, World Bank or the UN or Japan. It doesn't matter. Like whoever does it, or the government or private sector, how we can take the good example and scale up. I think that is very important. And then in that sense, I want to just comment on the second part that the fellow panelists have been kind of debating, taking the responsibilities of your own and walking the talk. Because this is environment issues, the climate change, the problem and challenge is that every action of the human being or every company or organizations does affect and impact climate and environment. At the same time, if you do good, that benefit cannot be personalized. It just so spreads to everybody. So that's the typical issue about public goods or public bad. That's why it's very difficult to put the finger to it. Okay, you're responsible, you do it, and everything is over. Because whatever you do, bad or good, it affects everybody. So so I think it is important at this point, the climate change, climate actions are everybody's problem, including yourselves, us, each one of us. So every nation, every company, every organization, every individual has to play his or her own part, and how to contribute it, what we can do through the actions we can, even at the household level, right? How to use electricity, turning off the light, or how to recycle, to your organization, how to create more energy efficient office environment, or don't throw a lot of we stopped using, for instance, the plastic bottles in the office and so forth. So everybody needs to do what we can do. That is not to say that we shouldn't keep demanding everybody else to do, and especially those who are rich nations and do a lot of more contributions to the carbon. We should continue doing that, but that doesn't mean that we can wait for somebody else to come and solve the problem.
at the individual level. I see Dr. Nina wanted to come in. Go ahead.
Yes, I'll do it very brief. Like this is to answer to the first gentleman's question about the grassroots level, the farmer level, whether they are aware and what.
Yes, it's working.
Yeah, so aware about the environmental change. What do they do? So I think I can answer because since we directly work with a lot of farmers, I think I can answer that bit. And saying that, like Sri Lanka, I think about 47 land is agricultural land. So the farmers, like what they do, current practice, what they do, like what they need is as an input, they need fertilizer, agrochemicals, they need water. So whether the use is efficient, like whether is there impact to the environment, that there's a lot more, as Ms. Kanda said, there's a lot more we have to do right now. Of course, there are small initiatives, as I explained earlier, even Kargis, what we have done with GAP certified village with the drip irrigation. Yes, that is a small initiative with 570 farmers. And similar thing we done with dairy farmers, about 500 dairy farmers, the fodder cultivation with drip irrigation. These are very small initiatives, but we have a lot more farmers. And that, of course, collectively, collaboratively, we should address this, because biggest problem is know-how. Yes, we can give. It's easy, like even agriculture ministry, the industry, we can give. But the financing part is the most difficult part. Is there should be some sort of a support, financial support, and it should, since to be sustainable, we need to show them. Of course, we can show that there's a return on it, because the productivity improves and you get a return. And saying another example, like since we directly communicate with farmers, I don't know whether they are fully aware about impact what they do to the environment. So that awareness is very important, because the excessive fertilizer usage and all, like this is some farmers, they use this sort of thing. Like they have a farmland for selling the crops. Same time, they have a small plot which is for their consumption. So this is what I'm saying is what I'm directly here, what I heard from a farmer. So this is for us. Why? So what is the difference? So there's a problem. There's a huge problem which impact environment. The excessive use of agrochemicals, and that maybe finally it comes up with this lot of kidney failures, like a lot of like toxicity. So that is one of the biggest problem in Sri Lanka, which is affecting the environment, and that we can do something collectively together to overcome it. And of course, there should be a financial support when we talk about the farm level. Farmers, they need that sort of support. Yeah. Thank you.
You and Chio kept on saying small initiatives, but really, these are big. These are initiatives that are concrete. So I like the amenity, but we just want to take this moment to really acknowledge the great examples and concrete examples at that. I see that Ken wants to come in, but I also see our timer flagging that we need to wrap up. But for everyone, and I'll start with Ken Onishi-san over here, when it comes to our call to action, to the group, to our audience here and also online, what really is our call to action here after this discussion? So in a world where we know that climate change is a pressing and will continue to be a pressing challenge, you see the private sector, the business community, the government, international agencies, the UN, have unique roles. We have unique roles to play. We've heard it. So what is one concrete initiative or step that you believe everyone, us here in this room can and beyond, can take to contribute to a more climate resilient Sri Lanka and a climate sustainable future? 2 sentences, Anishi-san.
Okay, just regarding to finance especially, I think keyword should be impact investment, not just finance, green finance, such as looking at the amount of money, the global finance have a great opportunity to give the impact investment. So even for us, having this big boat, we raised this money through impact investment, $10 million US, and then making a special purpose company And then this company is holding this ship, and in 10 years we are giving money back as leasing. So even for us, we can do this through impact investment. So now time is coming for impact investment, not just financing or lending or blah, blah. So please think about the potentiality of impact investment, especially who is sitting here, Professor Wu is a specialist for this impact investment. Maybe second stage he can explain what is impact investment for this kind of matters.
Okay, his takeaway, we listened to him at the second session. Dr. Fernando.
I'll be very brief. What I feel that what we need is collective transformation. And I would take my friend Denver's cue of the 7 Ps. We need to tie up the 7 Ps, and we need to create collective transformation so that 1 year or 2 years down the line, if we gather here and look back, we can see that we have at least taken some small steps of collective transformation and contributing towards ensuring that climate smart solutions have been implemented, and we could see that this type of session is not in vain. Thank you.
Ms. Kanda, concrete call to action.
I think I said most of what I said earlier, but basically every one of us has to find what can be done today. Take a local actions with a global perspective. We have a responsibility to educate our own children and grandchildren so that your small action becomes bigger and multiplied through your actions.
Absolutely. Major General.
A very good cross-section of 7 Ps are seated here. It's you and we. When I say me, it's a government sector. The government alone cannot do this. Had it been possible today, we wouldn't have been sitting here like this. So it's the collaborative action what we are expecting with 7 Ps, all you ladies and gentlemen sitting here. Reaching the last man, leaving no one behind. Understanding all the possible vulnerabilities and making sure we understand, plan, prepare, and build before we meet catastrophes and difficult situations. People have their own responsibilities. When it comes to the community level, it starts from your own backyard. So it's that awareness, education, what we are trying to inculcate from the school level, the village level, the community level. So that's why we are doing local disaster risk reduction programs, community-based disaster risk reduction programs. We are doing it. But as she mentioned, that farmers and those attitudes of certain people running for quick bucks, it's very difficult to change. So that's where we need 7 Ps to join the government that is with us to ensure we develop safer Sri Lanka.
And from the man who's coined 7 Ps himself, Denver, over to you.
The lady goes first. I'll go. Okay. Yeah, I think the mic works. So folks, this is a call to action. We are in a climate emergency. And emergency is not like the usual word, right? It's call to action now. And in that call to action, it's your responsibility to your stakeholders and to yourselves to future-proof your business by taking accountability and responsibility to doing what is right. Flip the script for yourself from a me and a now to a us and a later for your children's children. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Neelam, of course.
Yeah, thank you very much. So as all the panelists said, discussed and agreed, this is 7 Ps. Yes, we can do something together in future. From that before, like saying that, like what I see from the food security point of view, and I say all this climate change ultimately affect our food security. So right now, like about 18% 2023 statistics, 17% is food insecure. The previous year it was 28%. And when you go to like a upcountry area, is 68%, which is very, very high. And another sad situation is the energy the basic energy, adequate energy taken by a Sri Lankan is only 84%, 85%. So that is so sad. So with climate smart agriculture, with better solution, I hope we can change that, better nutrition for everyone. So I hope we can go there one day, and especially with the children. Right now, the future generation, the awareness, same time the nutritional level. Very sad to say, 1/3 of Sri Lankan children under malnutrition. So that is sad. So I hope we can have a better future with all these solutions. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, I'm always inspired whenever I have the opportunity to be here with you. And of course, this conversation will not happen without our esteemed panelists. Please give them your love and appreciation. Thank you so much for your insights. To you as well, joining us in this conversation here and also online. And we've had the privilege of hearing from the panelists, from everybody here as well, representing different sectors, perspectives, government, international agencies, the business community, on how we can tackle the pressing issue of climate change and its impact. We've discussed practical solutions, and I really love how everyone kept on theme, really focusing on the theme of moving from innovation to implementation, because we need to act now. And as we wrap up this session, let us remember that really time for action is now. We've had this chance to talk, but we need to act. And climate change is not really a distant threat. It's something that we feel every day. As Dr. Fernando mentioned, it's destroying businesses, it's impacting communities. As the Major General mentioned, every one of us here feel its impact. And as we step out of this room and into the wider world, let us carry this sense of responsibility and urgency. So again, remember, the journey towards a better future begins with us. Remember the 7 Ps you've been hearing. And again, we need to do this together, collaborate with one another, and speaking, understanding each other's approaches and languages and even pace, so that we may build a climate resilient Sri Lanka and an even better tomorrow. Thank you so much. And with that, thank you for joining us in this conversation, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the first panel discussion. And I take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed panelists and to our panel chair. We are profoundly grateful for your time and knowledge. Thank you. Moving forward, I now kindly invite Ms. Tiara Ganegama, a volunteer from the Pearl Protectors and an APAT Search and Rescue team member, onto the stage.
They say home is where the heart is. And for me, it's always been the ocean. My childhood curiosity blossomed as I explored the coral reefs surrounding our island. I found life in the smallest rock pools and enjoyed gazing out at the endless horizon. Unfortunately, much has changed within the short 19 years of my life, and the ocean is no longer the same place I once knew. Each time I dive around Pigeon Island and the surrounding reefs of Trincomalee, it's hard not to notice the visible decline in the health of our reefs and the loss of biodiversity. Something I now frequently encounter during my dives are signs of coral bleaching, a consequence of global warming. Corals are incredibly sensitive habitats, so even a slight rise in the water temperature could trigger these corals to expel the algae living in their tissue. This results in the once colorful coral reefs turning white in color, and this leads them to be more vulnerable to die from starvation and disease. The moment a reef ecosystem collapses, it not only harms marine life like fish, crabs, and turtles that rely on the reefs for sustenance and protection from predators, but it also affects us, humans. Every time a striking white coral catches my eye, my heart sinks. I believe it's the ocean's way of crying for help, a final reminder that we can't afford to stay silent or turn a blind eye, as the damage we all are making is irreversible. That's why I believe today holds importance, to make the right decisions and to unify our voices. Trust me, there is so much more worth fighting for. If we choose the correct path today, in 10 to 15 years, we can ensure that our children would grow up witnessing the same beauty we were fortunate enough to experience. Thank you.
As we just witnessed, Ms. Tiara took us on a journey that transcends the realm of facts and figure. She weaved together the story of our changing planet through the lens of her personal experiences. From our journey of reflection, let us transition towards the second panel discussion of our event. Allow me to introduce and kindly invite our panel chair for this session, Dr. George Cook, Senior Lecturer, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka, and the founder of Awarelogue Initiative. Next, I have the privilege of introducing and inviting the panelists for the session, centered around the theme, Navigating a Complex Ground, a multi-stakeholder approach to climate risk reduction. Dr. Anand Malavatantri, Advisor to the President of Sri Lanka on Environment, Climate Change and Green Finance, Presidential Secretariat. Ms. Begonia Ariano, Deputy Representative, UNICEF Sri Lanka. Mr. Masataka Uo, Director Strategic Planning, Networking and Development, APAT International, Japan. Mr. Shevan Daniel, Group Director, Capital Maharaja Group. Ms. Sinta Kanyawati, Director, Global Partnerships, APAT International, Country Director, APAT Indonesia. Mr. Gilbert Albero, President, APAT Philippines. Over to you, Dr. George.
Good morning. Thank you very much, firstly, to APED for the invitation to be a part of this discussion that we're having today. It's coming at a very important time. We're looking at what is happening around us in our waters around Sri Lanka, as you witnessed in the video just now. We're also talking about what is happening globally. And today we have panelists who are going to take us into more in-depth understanding of what is happening in their specific countries. We also need to understand what is happening in our own country. But we also need to look at what is happening at the grassroots level. We've been talking about the corporate sector in the last panel. We've been talking about efforts that have been made, efforts that are being taken, where we are going, how we are trying to improve the situation. And this is where we are 2 weeks away from a very important summit that is being convened in New York, where the Secretary General is going to be focusing on the whole area of climate ambition. Is it ambitious? Is a question that we have to stop and ask ourselves now. Are we trying to do something impossible? We've done the damage. Is it now impossible to recover, to come back, to bring ourselves back from the brink that we have pushed ourselves to? And this is where we are now in a phase in which we are trying to understand, trying to grapple with what has been done, what has taken place, what has been unfolding in the world as a whole, but what has been happening in our individual countries, in our cities, in our towns, in our villages, in our own neighborhoods. Denver, if I may borrow from a comment that you made in the last session, wherever you are at the moment, you talked about 98% of literacy in Sri Lanka. I have a small issue with that statistic, because when we look at 22 million people, and we look at the 2% that are said to be literate, we're talking about 440,000 people. I think the numbers are a bit wrong at that stage. It might be controversial to make that comment, but I'll make it all the same. When we look at our country and we look at the people and the decisions that are being made, forget about the political realm, forget about what they're doing in the political strata, but look at it as to how we are responding on an individual basis. Look at how we are responding in our neighborhoods. Look at how we are responding in our workplaces. Look at how we litter. Look at how we pollute. Look at how we cut down trees. Look at how we cut down everything that stands in the way of us taking a larger vehicle down a road or trying to expand in our territories. What are we doing? Are we literate? Are we literate? This is the question that we've got to keep asking ourselves. And that's where, when we talk about accelerating this process, we've got to start with individuals. And that's probably what we're going to focus on a lot in this panel, talking about shared experiences, but also looking at how we are going to take another step forward. And we'll come back to certain case studies and examples as we go along. We're indeed fortunate to have with us a very distinguished panel, ranging from, once again, the state to international organizations, to the private sector, also looking at organizations in other countries. And this is where it gives us an international flavor of trying to understand what we are doing and where we are going. To talk about the whole process of navigating a complex ground, I guess that's an understatement when we look at how complex the situation is. We've created such a terrible knot. It's such a mess in the world today. It's such a mess in our environment. How are we going to pull ourselves back? We know what the problems are. We've known the problems for some time now. We know that there's a need for change. But what are we doing? How are we actually increasing the pace, accelerating that process? And this is where we're going to look at a multi-stakeholder approach to climate risk reduction. First of all, if I may once again thank the panelists, many of you who have traveled from far to be here on this panel and to be with us this morning in Colombo. But let us first start with a panelist who is representing the state, Dr. Ananda Malavatantri, no stranger to the environment, someone who has dedicated his life to this particular sector and continues to do so in varied capacities. We thank you once again, Dr. Malavatantri. If I may ask you, we're looking at it at the state level. We'll look at individual levels, we'll go down to the grassroots. But when we look at the state, when we look at what is happening at the very top, at the very pinnacle, how do you see policies being implemented across the board? Because this is not something that is going to be confined to one ministry, to one institution, to one organization. It is something that is quite widespread. Everyone's involved in this. How are you tackling this?
Thank you, George. I think it's as it is. I think the last panel we clearly saw how complex it is and the need to come together as a multi-stakeholder and a multi-sectoral approach. Coming back to Sri Lanka, when you think about it, we should not have this problem. We are rich with natural resources. We have our ocean. We have our water resources. And we have our traditional knowledge. And we have our brilliant private sector. Rohan spoke, Denver spoke. So why this thing is not clicking? I think that's the question. So that requires this transformational thinking or a disturbance on the way we work and way we share and we work together. So when you think about, George, the question you ask is how complex this is. Complexity comes from multitude of angles. One is the simple thing is not being aware of the environmental processes, the cause and effect factors. Take a simple example. When we deforest or degrade the upper watersheds, our rain capture goes down, water infiltration goes down, we silt our tanks, and we reduce our irrigation potential, power generation potential, urban services and everything. Now how do we, and then it went down all the way, we saw the corals, all this silt gets into corals and then come with the increased temperature and the El Ninos and the other things. Now these things get really complex. Now, how do we unpack this? How do you take this knowledge in a very simple way to all the corners? I think that's one of the challenges we see. That also comes with the economics. Now, what is lacking in Sri Lanka is we don't quantify these things in terms of economics. For example, if you take the Kalani River Basin, which is one of my favorite examples, 1/4 of Sri Lankans live there. We drink that water. We have 10,000 businesses in operation. We need those livelihoods and 3 export zones. Now, how do we put all these things together? The connections and the economics. Now, this whole new subject is called the systematic ecosystem environmental accounting. In Sri Lanka, we are just starting to quantify each ecosystem monetarily and ecosystem-wise, and then put it together. So these kind of complexities are also compounded by the human resource capacity and also the data management. I think I want to harp on this data management because we see this as one of the critical areas. The information doesn't flow in a manner that is required. Now, for example, there was a good example. There was a huge crisis in the south of not having water, the simple example. One of the problems was that the farmers didn't go to the field at the right time. So the water was released by the irrigation, and the first round of water was not being used. And then there were more farmers cultivating beyond the carrying capacity because that was not somewhere, the science was not there. So at the end, there are so many paddy fields threatened by the drought, not having water. Now this season, the irrigation ministry and everybody is very concerned that everybody should go to the field on 25th of October. Do the Maha season in the right way. So these kind of things, I'm just throwing few examples to see the complexity. And then I think the Chio rightly said, think globally, act locally. Now we need to capitalize on most of the precision farming and very other techniques to reduce our water efficiency and energy efficiency, increase the energy efficiency and the water efficiency. So we are doing the right kind of adaptation and also bring everybody together with the right understanding and right information delivery so that we can work together and then on a right platform. Thank you very much.
No doubt complex. I mean, the complexity there itself is understood where there is a clear need for greater communication, farmers understanding. For example, the point that you raised about farmers not having gone into the fields at the right time. Now, this has been a process that has been going on for centuries. Farming is not something that started this year. Why? Why did that happen? Why have these lapses taken place? These are some of the areas that we need to start questioning. And this is where we go back to the whole process of awareness building and that question of literacy and understanding what actually has to be done. Ms. Bigona Arillano, Deputy Representative of UNICEF in Sri Lanka. I'm very happy that you're on the panel because I would also like to say that you're at the root of finding a solution to this problem. Everybody here is at a different level of involvement in different sectors. But you are working with a category of humans, if I may put it that way, who are going to be leading the future. We need to invest in this area. Children are the first to be affected. Children are also going to be adults in the years ahead, and they're probably taking wrong examples. They're taking wrong impressions into the future. I know UNICEF is doing a lot, not only in Sri Lanka, but globally, and has been over the decades. When we talk about developing countries, we're talking about different categories of children. We're talking about children in the developed world who are probably seeing a lot more of the awareness that is being raised. But when you look at developing countries, we're grappling with basic things of putting food on the table, having nutritious meals, ensuring they have uniforms, they have school books, they have shoes, they are able to go into schools. When you look at it from a developing country perspective, what do you see UNICEF doing very much in terms of helping children understand environmental shocks, how the environment is impacting them, how they are stakeholders in the environment? How is this being done?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting UNICEF and for including in this panel the needs, the specific needs and rights of children in relation to climate change. Usually there is many events like this, but usually the voices of children are not heard or the child rights are not included in the discussion. So I think this is a great first step. And well, for UNICEF, well, everybody agrees here that climate change is a planetary crisis affecting children and young people. Children and young people are not only the future, they are the present as well. So, and they are affected by this crisis, no? And it is also exacerbating existing inequalities, where the most vulnerable countries and people fear the worst impacts of climate change. And the question is, are we doing enough? Children's fullest development is intertwined with the environment. It is something that it goes together, no? And children that live in countries that maybe are contributing least to this problem are enduring the most dangerous floods, droughts, storms, heat, epidemics. We all know about that. Well, in order to contribute to this discussion, UNICEF launched in 2021 the Children's Climate Risk Index, the first comprehensive analysis of climate risk from a child's perspective, because it was completely lacking this kind of analysis. It ranks countries based on children's exposure to climate and environmental shocks, such as cyclones, heat waves, and air pollution, as well as their vulnerability to those shocks, based on their access to essential services such as water, sanitation, healthcare, and education. In this report, approximately 1 billion children, nearly half of the world's 2.2 billion children, live in one of the 33 countries classified as extremely high risks. Though this crisis affects all children, some children are more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change than others. For example, a child who doesn't have access to clean water or access to healthcare is more vulnerable to climate and environmental hazards, shocks, and stresses than those who have no access. Well, these underlying vulnerabilities, combined with high levels of multidimensional poverty, socioeconomic fragility, and displacement, contribute to the erosion of development progress, pushing the most vulnerable children deeper into poverty, at the same time increasing the risk of experiencing the worst and most life-threatening events of climate change. But there is still hope. Comprehensive and urgent action is required, including adaptation and resilience building targeting children. Together, such efforts, that is something that we have to do together, is not only the government, is the business, is social, is NGOs, is every part of society, have to engage to such an effort to offer the most effective way to protect children's life and family livelihoods from the immediate and expected impacts. But there is also economic arguments to this for investing in child-centered approaches to climate change and adaptation. Such investments will reach a large proportion of the global population over a longer period of children constitute the largest group at risk from climate change. Because building resilience means reducing the long-term economic losses associated with the degradation of health, education, and protection caused by climate change among children. And many child-centered climate change adaptation interventions to reduce children's vulnerabilities are the lowest cost options. The lowest options. They are well established, such as insecticide-treated mosquito nets, or water, sanitation, and hygiene training. Well, and UNICEF at the moment is supporting countries worldwide to increase the resilience of essential services, including health and nutrition, water and sanitation, education and social protection. It is imperative to reduce the impact of climate change and prevention to prevent millions of children and their families from slipping into extreme poverty by 2030. The best investments we can make for children now are to ensure the services they need to survive, grow, and thrive, are resilient to climate and environmental shocks, and to support them with the education and the skills they would need to adapt and create a green transition and better world. Okay, and UNICEF, well, is helping, is working in every country, in 190 countries and territories, and assisting governments to make societies more climate change adapted.
Thank you. You raised a very important point there, talking about how taking action, helping children understand this is one of the lowest cost options that are around. But why aren't we doing more? Why aren't we doing more is the question that we've got to keep asking ourselves. And talking about finance, I would like to bring in Mr. Masataka Uo at this point, just to ask you, you are the founder and CEO of the Japan Fundraising Association, and you've been involved in this activity for quite some time. How do you make this connection in terms of ensuring, as we also heard in the earlier panel, that there is enough financing to ensure that these issues are being addressed? Are we doing enough? Are we dedicating enough of our resources, our financial resources in this regard?
Hello. It works. Thank you, George. Thank you very much for asking. Yes, first, I'm very happy to see you again. I came here last year. I'm so happy to be invited to this event again. And yes, thank you very much for asking. Always we are making effort to develop good narratives for changing society, changing the paradigm of the people in the financial sector. And always we approach from two different aspects, like the opportunity side and the threat side. And always we expect that the financial sector leaders take spontaneous action. Also the business leaders also take spontaneous actions with goodwill to reduce climate risk. However, we cannot heavily rely on that. So we increase a little bit peer pressure on it to make something happen. And usually, whenever we think about the pressure on decision-making process of the business sector and the financial sector, we tend to think that governmental regulation might work. But today, I would like to share my best practice and the collaboration with the financial sector, how we could increase the momentum in our society. 2 years ago, together with several leaders from major banks, we created a new initiative in our society, the name of which is Impact-Driven Financial Institution Initiative, which sounds a little bit longer term, Impact-Driven Financial Institutions Initiative, what we call. And in that initiative, we designed criteria and the principle for the financial institutions in which we set up how they manage and how they create product for advancing impact in a society. Impact means climate impact and social impact. And when we started this initiative, many people say that, oh, Masa, only very few like-minded small financial institutions can sign this kind of initiative. And in that initiative, we expected that CEOs and the president of major financial institutions should sign on the initiative. And 2 years passed, amazingly. 63 major financial institutions, CEOs and presidents, including Mitsubishi, Mitsui Sumitomo, Daiwa, all kinds of major financial institutions, CEOs signed up the initiative. And that was a great change maker for us because once they signed up, they created an impact investment product, and also their decision-making process, it's kind of mainstreaming process. All kinds of decision-making were made based on the impact-oriented aspect. And after that, this initiative was a kind of gentle reminder to the business leaders to step more actions toward climate change and social innovations. And furthermore, because this private capital was affected by this initiative, we see the more tech innovation could be observed in a society. As you can imagine, tech innovation for climate risk reduction could be a huge business opportunities for Japanese companies. And given the situation where we have a lot of natural disasters in our society, same as Sri Lanka has, it's a pity, yes, we have natural disasters, but the flip side of it, there are a lot of experiences, data, and the field where we can create and test new products and services, right? So by sharing this kind of information, by visualizing and crystallizing the best practices available in our society, we can change the mindset of the business sector. So key thing what I want to say is that for me, the changing society is not just creating a new regulation and new businesses. Instead, the changing society is changing the paradigm of people. And to change the paradigm of people, the platform like Asia-Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management, this is the neutral platform. So the platform like us can take a leadership to mobilize attention and empathic support from various people to make something new things happen. So we are very happy to work together with you to make something new things happen in Sri Lanka and in Asia-Pacific. Thank you.
I guess that's one of the most important areas there is trying to make that change actually happen, walking that talk, going that extra mile. And this is where I want to bring in Siobhan here, who is once again no stranger to making change in this country. through his own individual efforts and also through the efforts of the organization that he represents here today, the Capital Maharaja Group. Shrivan, I know you individually and the organization are doing a lot in terms of going beyond sometimes what you might question is the mandate of the media, where you are trying to do so much more, and people might ask why it's not being done, and someone's got to do it, and you've got to go out there and make that kind of change and make a difference at the end of the day. But Shrivan, when we talk about, and I'll come back to the whole area of some of the research that you've been doing and some of the background that you've gone into in terms of this country and the civilizational past of the country. But there's a very important or a very interesting quotation by Sir David Attenborough. He talks about the fact that saving our planet is now a communications challenge. We know what to do, we just need the will. And this is where the media plays a humongous role. And when we look forward, when we look at this acceleration of the transition, making sure that we are navigating the complexities involved, what solutions do you think the media can bring to bridge the gap that exists between climate education and action? There's a gap. People know, or they don't know, or they don't want to know. How do we bridge this gap?
Thank you, Dr. George. It's wonderful to be in this panel and wonderful to see all of you. A very special thank you to APAD and Hush for the years and years of close association, and as far as News First is concerned, we're certainly a much improved news outfit thanks to APAD. And when I watch the videos behind us, behind you, I can only be proud of the years and years of association with this wonderful organization. So I'm going to take one word from your question, Dr. George, in order to answer it, and that is the word bridge. See, media is nothing but a bridge towards the truth, towards awareness, enlightenment, whatever you might want to call it. Whether or not you choose to cross that bridge is completely up to you. Which bridge you choose to cross is also completely up to you. This is a two-way street. The media, if we were to use the analogy of a bridge, must be strong, must be founded on proper principles, must be built by professionals. And so when you choose which outlet of information to trust, which is very important in what we're going to talk about today, you must ensure that it is a bridge built by professionals, people who are very serious about what they're doing. If not, not only are you going to reach the other side in a completely different destination, but you're likely going to be in danger whilst getting there. So the first point to understand is this is not the onus of the media to somehow drag a population kicking and screaming towards enlightenment. This is very important. It is a shared responsibility and obligation on everyone's part to be well informed. It is not enough to be apathetic towards important news and information. I hear this quite a bit. I don't watch the news because there's too much of violence, too much of politics, too much of this, too much of that. You being apathetic towards important news and information will only mean that you will eventually make wrong decisions. There are very serious professionals who put all of their life into providing you with curated truth that is important for you. For example, we're talking about the climate crisis. For decades and decades and decades, the information has been out there. If you think about the human-elephant conflict in Sri Lanka, until elephants start marauding Horton Place, I think we will not care too much about it, or unless it becomes a hashtag. But the human-elephant conflict has been something that's been highlighted in Sri Lankan media for decades, but it's not been understood. The apathetic attitude towards that kind of news and information is perhaps why we are continuously in this quagmire and unable to get out of it. So I think it's important to understand media as that bridge. We are not the destination. We are simply the bridge that's going to get you towards the truth. So you need to also walk that bridge We need to walk that bridge, and we need to choose the right bridge to cross the murkiness of disinformation and miscommunication.
Definitely. And you are walking that talk. I mean, you are doing that. You are trying to ensure that happens. And that's a cue that has to be taken by many in understanding that we always, as you said, we won't talk about the human-elephant conflict, or we won't get too much bothered about it until they start walking around in Colombo, Horton Place, and all the other main roads in Colombo 7. This is where we are very apathetic. It doesn't concern me, I don't care, it's not my problem, it's not an issue. But then we saw a huge change last year where people realized, oh, it is my problem, it is affecting me. But why do we wait until that point? Why don't we make ourselves informed? Why don't we do a lot more? And this is where I would like to cross over to Ms. Sinta Kaniawati, who's from Indonesia, Director Global Partnerships of APAD International. You come from a country which is the largest in the ASEAN region. It's a country with a very rich heritage, a country where when it comes to tolerance, when it comes to understanding, so much has been done. It's a country that is extremely progressive in that sense. When we look at women, women are seen as victims, women are also seen as huge change agents who can do a lot more. When you look at Indonesia, when you look at the entirety of Indonesia and its size, how do you see women as active and effective change agents across the country through the experience of the work that you have done, the engagements you have had across your country?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. George. Yes, I think it's not, well, fortunately I'm also a woman here, so I'm probably voicing out some of the concern or even wishes for the women. It's my...
Is it working? Yeah, it's working.
Yeah.
It's working.
Okay. Is it
No?
okay?
Oh, why don't you tell us?
Okay, I think this is better. Thank you. Right, so Indonesia is like the rest of the region in Asia Pacific. So let me just start with a bigger picture before coming into women. I think we all agree, and it's a fact, that in Asia Pacific, this is the region which is probably the most prone to disasters. And I just quote a study by UNDP as well as ADB and UNESCAP back in 2013. It was in the span of 40 years that the effect of disasters has doubled in the span of time of 40 years, impacting almost 70 million people affected of flood. I know now it's probably bigger in terms of numbers. And then in terms of hurricane, typhoon, it's actually much larger. So these are also an effect in Indonesia. I know typhoon is probably relatively new to Indonesia, but it's already coming and we are affected. And on the economic side, I think we also understand, apart from Indonesia, we collectively, as Asia Pacific region, it is actually also the source of growth in economy. And this is, I think, putting us in a spotlight that we cannot let this slide away and not doing anything, because it's really the world's economy will be impacted. And I'm focusing actually in the medium and small medium enterprises, the micro and small medium enterprises in Indonesia, and I think also the same statistic happened in Asia Pacific, that almost 40% of these MSME are actually women-led. So if it is the case, and women is pretty much critical to the economic development, and if it is affected by disaster, then you know what the impact would be. So for Indonesia, we also understand, and I think it has been years, we understand the roles of women is actually, we have some commonality between men and women, but we also understand that women have certain roles that specific and that we could actually be part of the solution for any disaster management solution, including disaster risk reduction, up to the recovery and rehabilitation and reconstruction. So in Indonesia, we actually look into the private sectors. So MSME is not always working alone. We are working in an ecosystem in a larger business sectors in which larger corporations are intertwined. So this is an area where we want to actually engage business sectors, including MSME, majority are women, to be part of it. So what we have done in Indonesia, it's quite a long list of basically, I would say, aspect that has been covered. But one of it is really access to finance. I think Masa just now talking about the importance of finance. And we do see still a gap on access to finance, mostly to women leading MSME in Indonesia. And I think this is one way on how we are able to actually equip women to be more resilient if they have access to finance. And I think this is not only helping women, but I think it is also helping the entire family. The second part of it is actually on training and capacity building. I think we are in Asia Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management also looking at the training and capacity building is one of the crucial elements. I think providing knowledge alone will not do anything unless it is being assisted. So we know there is actually a need for training and capacity building for this women's group, and so that they can help themselves as well as the family. Apart from that, I think another notions which is really, I would say it's a good trend in Indonesia is really the partnership and collaboration. I think now more and more, if we see private sector's collaboration, including government, including civil society, there's always looking into a more holistic manner. They seldom see only do on their own act, but they are looking who can actually help together, you know, making it works in the entire ecosystem. So this is how we actually work in Indonesia, and we hope to continue improve this and make it even bigger and wider. Thank you.
Resilience being one of those key words there, making sure that people are resilient, women certainly are having that challenge which they're accepting and they're overcoming that. And that's also connected, I guess, to the education aspect, because mothers, women are playing a big role in promoting education, understanding that even further, and we'll come back to further discussions on that. But if I were to go to our other panelist, Mr. Gilbert Albero, President of APAD Philippines, we hear some very shocking statistics coming out of the Asia-Pacific region, of the Southeast Asian region, rather. Your country alone is ranked at number 4 among countries that have been most affected by climate risks in a 20-year period from 2000 to 2019. If you look at the last decade, we're told that 78% of the global total of disasters have been taking place in the Asia-Pacific region. This is very alarming. How worried are you and concerned are you, and what measures have been taken? If you can shed light on how, from a more regional perspective, what effort is being taken in order to mitigate, address, ensure that we thwart it, get rid of it. I guess it's not possible to eradicate it, but what are we doing to at least alleviate the situation?
Yeah, George, before I proceed with that very complex question of yours, allow me to at least extend my gratitude to APAD Sri Lanka through Hash, and allow me also to extend my warmest congratulations for making this event so successful, and then also to APAD Global, to Ken, for really giving us a dynamic leadership that instead of just mere response to disaster, we're now into tackling this complex task of climate change. So thank you so much. Now, going back to a specific concern, allow me also to shed some context data. As Sinta previously said, given the current economic boom or perspective on Asia, because globally Asia now is a good economic destination for big countries. And also, Asia being considered as the biggest population, 60% comprises of the Asia-Pacific region in terms of population. And we are so rich in natural resources. Same time being so reliant on agricultural sectors. So given that, allow me to expound more on that human mobility issue. The last 10 years, it's almost internal displacement. Data says that it's almost 225 million internal displacement, which is too alarming. And a while ago, it's mentioned that Sri Lanka has 4 seasons. In the Philippines, we make it simple. We only have 2 seasons. No water and a lot of water. Like just yesterday or last week, an hour or 3 hours of heavy rainfall makes the key city of the Philippines, they cancel schools, they cancel the work in the Metro Manila. So that's how human mobility is greatly affected and the impact of that in the local economy. So the big factors in this, we used to call climate change as the FAO or the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations call it now a climate crisis or a climate emergency. It's like what we have put medical emergency with the COVID. It's really on the mindset right now. So looking at that, in the Philippines, commonly there's a typhoon, which is our #1 concern. Typhoon brings us flooding. Floodings brings us to the evacuation center, brings us to displacement and human mobility. So displacement or mobility brings us an erosion to our disaster resiliency. A 10-step forward after a flood strikes or typhoon strikes bring us almost 20 steps backward. So that's the impact of this crisis on this complex situation, are really alarming rate of how climate-induced migration is impacting not just the Philippines, but the entire Asia Pacific. So I would like to borrow Dr. Rohan about the building better before. Is by doing that, we should really come up with the syndicated idea of making things advancedly known that the impact should be less than the preparation that we are trying to overcome. So going back to the impact of the human mobility or displacement, it affects so much, as Mom said, the children. The women, which Sinta says she's so fortunate to be women. Old people. And the agricultural sector. That's the great sectors where the impact of that brings us to a more poor sectors. We being rich in natural resources, being rich in agricultural activities, that impact brings us to a more poor situation. So building better before, I think really good collaborative opportunities for that impact financing will surely work. So I think I would just rest on that, and that's the challenges. Possibly in the next few minutes we'll talk about opportunities that we can look forward to.
Definitely. Certainly you're navigating a very complex problem, a very complex scenario, and a region which is going through so much on a daily basis. As you talked about having too much water or having no water at all, which is something that we are experiencing a lot here in South Asia as well, when we look at all of our countries in the South Asian region. The floor is open. If anyone would like to pose a question to a member of the panel, please feel free to do so. We have a hand up here. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Dr. Sajit Tejasinghe, Secretary of Sri Lanka Medical Association. Thank you, Harsh, for inviting us. So my question, basically it's actually a question as well as a suggestion. So I would take the second part of the topic, the multi-stakeholder approach to climate risk reduction. So for an example now, from the previous panel discussion, we had the food city chains, the Cargills came in. So just a suggestion. So now we have, if you go to the food city chains, when we go to the vegetable and the fruit areas, we have the piles and piles of polythene bag rolls where the people just take only 100 grams of onion, 100 grams of chili, only 2 or 3 pieces of ginger. So now all of us know the wallet chain is now functioning. So we have the solution, it's just a matter of implementing it. So if I'm sure, pretty sure that there are multi-stakeholder entrepreneurs here where we can print whatever the bag or put the bag and print the logo and give it to the customers. And now there is a law where it's a right of a customer to take a bag. So I'm not telling that get rid of all these plastics bags, and because there can be other problems and litigations and everything. So just while keeping these bags, why can't we just keep these paper bags also and give an option to the customer and just market it like which we can we can direct the particular idea towards the particularly into the brain, because everything what we do ultimately affects the human. So now there are plenty of studies to show all these plastics, the tiny ones, are crossing the human placenta. So my question is, what are the barriers? Why can't we bridge that gap for the audience, for the panelists as well as for the previous session panelists? Thank you.
With permission of the panelists, before we request the panelists to respond, we have a representative from Cargill here herself who would like to respond. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for raising that question actually. So since one of the biggest retail chain in the country, so I would answer yes, like we should reduce polythene use. But I have to say, like, what we have is that is not real polythene what you see. It is biodegradable, which is made out of starch base, which is like a planet healthy. So that's why maybe you have noticed those are like not strong as earlier right now. It breaks easily. So that is a practical problem we have, but those are expensive. Again, like a current regulation of, I think in foreign countries, how they reduce usage of polythene is they charge it. Like they charge it to consumers. So how many bags you want, they need to pay. But unfortunately, Sri Lanka, we cannot do that because as there's a consumer affair authority regulation that we cannot sell packaging. So that, of course, collectively should change because you should give responsibility back to consumer to reduce usage of polythene. Because as an industry, only this is on behalf of, because Cargill is only one supermarket chain, I'm speaking on behalf of other as well. The industry alone can, because this is a huge cost. When you go to biodegradable bag, it is like 3, 4, 5 times maybe higher. And when you want to keep the strength, you need to increase the gauge. Then the price is much higher. So I think that's why you notice these bags are like very much breakable right now. So that is collectively, of course, we should change and should give the responsibility to consumer as well. Thank you very much. So there are initiatives we have done, like that should be like a done by everywhere, and that also do collectively, yes. And again, telling another answer to that, like polythene problem, there are small initiatives, everyone that, I don't know whether you all know that we have 6 car park spaces which done from recyclable plastic, which coming out of our factories. So those are small initiatives we are doing, and yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, I guess Dr. Sanjeev wants to make one comment, but then this conversation would continue. I know we want to ask the panel to also respond. It's very good, and we have another question coming up from this side too. Because I think that whole knowledge, awareness is something that is very important.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, yeah, I feel I should thank Cargill sir, because now first time I have seen that flexible plastic collection bins are there in these food city chains, because first I saw it at Akuragoda Cargill's. So I always market it. If you go to my Facebook, I have put so many things and put this Cargill's photos also, and branding them. Just go and put this flexible plastic. That's a very good initiative. The problem of getting down this thickness is now the strength has gone down, but the people now, because of the strength, the number of usage of bags have gone up, because they keep on using 2 or 3 multiple bags, because ultimately it will affect these pearl protectors, because these turtles and all sort of fellows will misunderstand it with jellyfish, and they will start eating that.
Correct. Now, I guess we'll take one more question from this side, and then we will also go there. Yes, over here. I guess a very important thing in awareness about plastic bags is making people aware. You don't need to put one apple into one bag. You don't need to put a leek into a bag. You can always stick the price tag onto it. Many people don't do that. You see them buying a handful of things and they've got so many bags in the process. Attitudes, mentalities have to change. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is John Nsubuga, working with the World University Service of Canada. Yes, I'm just learning something from this multi-stakeholder approach to climate risk reduction. And for this approach to be effective, I noticed that we need data. We need information. We need to understand our progress towards climate risk reduction. Therefore, I'm just wondering how we are monitoring, evaluating, documenting, and learning from all these nice interventions by the different stakeholders. Because I'm really wondering how we are contributing to SDG 13. Where is that? Maybe I would like to ask a question. Or how can we get that one-stop center where we can really get this data from? Because every partner has a different intervention. Every stakeholder has a different intervention. We would like to document what intervention has really worked, what intervention has not worked, such that if a new partner comes in, he's able to start from somewhere. So I'm looking at that one-stop center. It's really a complex ground, and that's why it's beating my mind. So how are we contributing to the SDGs? How are we measuring the SDGs? Number 2, we have a crucial stakeholder, and that is the last citizen. Take a case of Sri Lanka. So my question is, how is the climate risk agenda being translated to the last citizen? For example, the last citizen of Sri Lanka, because these are some of the major players towards the climate issues. Therefore, how are we translating this? Because we might be here and we are discussing these issues. This is complicated language to some of those people down there. They do not understand the climate issues. So how are we translating this agenda to them? Because these are the major players. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll take one more question from over here, the gentleman over here, yes? And then we'll come there, yes. Then we will ask our panelists to respond. Please.
Thank you. My previous question, I would like to put it to Anand, because I know he's working very closely with the President on the climate, and President has been making a few remarks recently. Recently he said that he wants to make Sri Lanka a hub for green financing. Then there is this Green University, Environment or Climate University to all coming up. So we hear a lot of these things going to happen. Like Dr. Rohan Fernando earlier said, we have a lot of policies, how they actually get implemented. And my earlier question was also how much of green financing is actually coming into the country or has come in. So I'd like to put Anand a bit on the hot seat to know whether he can give me an answer on that.
Okay, so shall we start with that, Dr. Maratantri, if you can respond to that? And the other panelists are more than welcome to come on board.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those questions. It's a very pertinent question and something that we are facing and working on it intensively, because we need this green finance to come into the country to increase our liquidity and to meet the debt requirements. Just I want to go back and explain where we are, so probably it might be helpful. You know, the country faced a severe situation some time back and had to end up with the IMF. So now we are on IMF package with certain conditions. One of the conditions is that until IMF process gets settled and negotiations complete, the country cannot go and tap too much innovative financing. So we ask the question continuously, okay, when is that time? So now the time is becoming available. Around November, the government is trying to complete the IMF process negotiations. So at that point, Sri Lanka can start negotiating the climate swaps, nature swaps, and many other impact financing, that kind of thing. So one primary requirement is us to develop few large projects that we can put in the front of debtors, so that their own, now for example, if you take a country who had pledged to the UNFCCC so many billions for global benefit, we could, maybe one of those countries are one of our debtors. We could combine the green financing and the debt financing all into one package and go in front and say, negotiate, okay, your objectives are same, we will report back to the UNFCCC that you helped us. So what we need is pretty much good project that resonate those countries' objectives, at the same time has a nice story. Because that story, you had to pack the humanitarian side of that story as well. I think Rohan highlighted that waste management example. If we didn't have that, that's a classic climate project. So likewise, we need to have larger project. I cited that Kalni Basin, which will qualify as a project. And then urban forestry, we are trying to work on large project. Like that, we invite you to work with the relevant authorities and generate these larger projects so that starting from early next year, we can start tapping in these. But having said that, there are some precursors. One, our governance. Because once you get into any one of these schemes, we need to be able to report on a timely basis and a very transparent manner. We need to put those systems in place because right now our ratings are not the best. Then comes to the commercial borrowings. Commercial market Sri Lanka rating will come up hopefully in another 2-3 years' time, where Sri Lanka's creditworthiness will go up to that level, where we will have the access to direct borrowings, unless that good reputed company and the creditworthiness is being used in that context. So that's where we are. Hopefully that will clarify on the green finance aspect. So it's something that the country needs. Country has a lot of natural resources. Country is one of the top 10 climate vulnerable countries. So we will qualify, but we need to work together. Public-private partnerships are the key. So that's where it is. And then second question, I think it was the climate information and then the one-stop shop kind of a thing. So that again came up many a times because we don't have good baselines in one place. We don't have good data assembled in a way that we can do modeling, simulations, what-if scenarios, combine the economics and the social benefits and evaluate which way we should go. So as a result of that, the Presidential Secretariat is coming forward with this idea of climate change office and then trying to get these databases and the things like that in coordinate in a data can be in different entities, but put a good metadata and then good accessibility platform so that we can work. That we require I was talking to Denver also on this one. So we need support in getting those kind of databases in place so that the data with the census, data with the survey department and data with the urban development, all that can be accessed by public. And we have ICTA there to a certain extent. We need to boost some of those capacities. So that's where we are on the exchange side. Thanks. Hopefully, George, that's the question, right?
Thank you. If I were to bring in Ms. Arilano also, in terms of the SDG question and where we are standing, how are we in terms of implementation, where are we going? If you could respond to that.
Well, it's a difficult question. I know that there is going to be global events this year as well, trying to evaluate progress and on the SDGs. Climate change is one of the hardest challenges, no, for the development of children and of population in the world. So it is something that it is not only for governments, it is for society in general, for the cooperation and for business as well to be involved and to try to reach a solution. For UNICEF as well, it's very important to hear and to involve children and adolescents in the solution as well. We don't have to think of them only as victims, but also as part of the solution and agents of change. That is, I think, very important. One of the questions was about disseminating and informing the population on climate change, the effects of climate change. That is something that we should do more, and we should involve them, not only in informing them, but also involving them in the solution and mobilizing them. For example, children and young people, they have given us example to adults in many cases. No? They have mobilized in many countries and they have asked governments for solutions and they have mobilized themselves. And that is something very inspiring that should be also inspire all of us as well. No? And there has been changes as well. No? In the conference of parties in Egypt last year, for the first time, countries around the world formally recognized the role of children as agents of change. and encourages parties to include children and youth in the processes of designing and implementing climate policy and action. I think that is key, and that is very important, and it should be the same with women, and it should be the same with communities, because we cannot really reach to a solution without involving everybody in the population. Thanks.
Would you like to respond to any of the points that were raised? Yes, please, go ahead.
So I like the comment of data sharing regarding the social innovation. In Japan, we experienced tremendous growth of impact investments over the last 5 years. In 2017, it was just 50 million US dollars, 500 million US dollars. Now it's reached to 50 billion US dollars. And through this tremendous growth, next question is impact wash and impact transparency. This is the reason why we established a platform together with 250 companies and the foundation, the government, to set up a platform for sharing the knowledge of impact measurement and management. And through this process, what we learned is that the sharing evidences and knowledges of impact is really, really game changer in our society. By accumulating data and information and share on the platform, everybody can get new ideas and new approaches. Even from the governmental sector, they join and share those kind of information. So knowledge sharing is a very important part of climate risk reduction. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Dr. George, allow me to share our story in the APAD Philippines. We started basically from the private sector, from the local chambers up to the national chambers in the Philippines. So we do institutional partnerships. So from the private sector, we evolved to the academe. So we partner with the universities, key universities in every key cities in the Philippines. And after that, we go to the media. We partner with the National Association of Media. We call it the KBP, Kilusan ng Broadcaster ng Pilipinas. So it's a national organization that is part of our sectoral partnership. So coming into the APAD platform, so the media is our key partners in promoting, marketing, saying our good stories that we conduct every event that we do in each regional sectors. So then comes the COVID experience. We partner with the biggest medical association in the Philippines. It's almost all key cities, provinces in the Philippines are covered with that association. Why do we need to partner with them? COVID as a medical emergency. From then on, we collaborate, and then up until now, we are doing psychosocial trainings, addressing those vulnerable communities. We train them how to adapt or how to face challenges in the disaster-prone areas, especially the first responders. So it's by institutional partnership that we want to evolve the ever-changing dynamics of the DRR. So we go next to the academe, and then right now we're partnering with, actually it's not right now, it's been a long time partner, is the Department of Health. That's our partner in the government sector that do health concerns. And we are evolving to adding more partners, especially on the part of the government. That's our common story, like to share to our partner stakeholders, to the other APAD networks in the Asia Pacific. Before I forget, we also partner, right now we are mobilizing a volunteer network for young populations. It's by harnessing that immense resource. Imagine that in the Philippines, we are so many young demographics. They are the one really giving us a lot of opportunities in terms of growth, in terms of really a functional youth, young dynamics in the Philippines. So through them, we are harnessing the promotion of the social media through the young youth volunteers. So it's our response to really mainstreaming our good story that we tell not just to our partners but to the entire Filipino population. Thank you so much.
We have one question from here. We're conscious of the time as well. Do we have any other questions that, yes, and at the back there too. Yes, please go ahead.
I'm Izzadin from LPG Plantations. I was just listening to all the panelists, and what I was thinking is that we see a problem. That is mainly we have to feed a huge generation of people in the world. And we are seeing there is a climate emergency. The people, we have a lot of tacit knowledge which is down with our people, which have come from our forefathers. Are we tapping into those? Because when I was a child, I can remember the paddy fields were like, they started the work before the rains. And with the rains they planted. And when the dry spell came in, that was the time of harvesting. Now today it's not done. These things have gone off. Or I mean to say that like people have got into machinery. Earlier they used only a mammoth and they did it, so they had to time it well. Now people think that we have the machinery, we can go through. Now we have to marry two things. That is the tacit knowledge what our forefathers had, as well as the present knowledge what the industry has built. Right? Because they knew. When I was a young planter, we used to know that before pruning, before the rains come, we see the termites climbing up the wood, and the plants just putting out new shoots. So these are things on observations which people have brought down. So this is where, if we only go by the new technology, it's fine to have, precision agriculture is fine, but how much? We are in 40% of our land, more than 40% in agriculture. More than 40% of the community working on agriculture, right? How much can we go for precision agriculture? What about the rest? What is the affordability? So all this has to be taken through. I think, Professor, I would like you to just comment how we can go forward.
I would invite Dr. Amarthantra to mention that briefly, and also invite Shravan to talk about, because an area that he's doing research into. Dr. Amarthantra, if you would like to.
I think, I cannot disagree with you. It's exactly what we need. And that had been there traditionally. If you take our traditional tank cascade culture, and then the way we have dealt with the wildlife populations and all that, there's a lot of knowledge that we can bridge. So I cannot say this knowledge is not being used, but I think either part as a ignorance. Now, one classic example is that last Yala, people didn't go to the field. They were celebrating New Year. So as a result, we lost a lot of water use efficiency. So it's need knowledge and then little bit of a stick somewhere to get this going, and then in there, inject this as much as traditional knowledge that you could use, because most of the pest management practices, there are techniques in the traditional knowledge. So it is there. It's not that people doesn't know, but somewhere down the road, this information gap still exists. So we all are responsible for, we have to work on that and then promote it. So I think you have cited few examples. Yes, true.
Yes. Shravan, if you would like to respond to that point, and then we'll come to
Certainly. I think the professor is quite right in the sense that if you really think about Sri Lanka, we have over 100 rivers that flow out into the ocean. We have incredible highland forests. We have arid regions. We have rainforests. We have mountains. We have deserts. We have just about everything, and we're surrounded by a beautiful ocean. And the risk is, if we are not quite aware of what we're doing and how we're handling and managing these resources and these natural blessings, we're going to lose it. And secondly, what was the philosophy that existed before modern times that supported our communities to become a civilization? There's a difference between a nation with a history and a nation that has become a civilization. And Sri Lanka is known to be a civilization, one of the only island civilizations in all of the world. And that's why we created man-made structures that supported human communities over 3,000 years ago that exist to this day and serve people to this day. The cascade system that Professor was talking about, the WAVA. I don't know of any other man-made system in the world that serves human beings for thousands of years and continues to do so to this day. If you think about the cascade system itself, it's not just dug reservoirs. In fact, none of them were dug at all. The Anuradhapura is known as the Vau Bandi Rajya for a reason. It was not the Vau Heru Rajya. So our ancients were able to identify geological features and beautifully create these water catchment areas in order to not just make use of the environment, also to protect and sustain the environment. And then from those catchment areas that we can call VAVAs, the water was conveyed to other parts of that area, also using the same technology. So actually, if you really think about it, it is a philosophy of sustainability. That's what helped Sri Lanka exist as a civilization for thousands of years. Ours was not a civilization or a technology that simply carried water from A to B, as it is today. Ours was a method of conveyance where those meandering roots of water would sustain, would nourish the soil, would nourish water, would filter, it would protect forests, and also, most importantly, it would recycle water. And so, as these meandering water flows made its way from A to B, it nourished the entire area. The Yodal is a perfect example. It's in the dry zone, but on either side of the Yodala, you have incredible greenery, which probably didn't exist before that waterway was created. The importance of knowing this and understanding this philosophy of sustainability is because I think, as much as we are indebted to the world economically today, I think the world is also indebted to Sri Lanka for protecting this body of knowledge and protecting this philosophy of sustainability for thousands of years. And so I don't quite subscribe to the idea that we can be dictated to, where Trojan horses in the name or in the cause of climate change can be parked here in Sri Lanka and in the name of green energy, and then we end up losing our energy dependence. That is counterproductive. We must be very careful of that because we know sustainability and we have known sustainability for much longer than the rest of the world have. So dictating terms to Sri Lanka in those terms is not on. In fact, I think the world can learn quite a bit from us. But of course, we need the help of the world. There's no two words about that. But I think we must be careful not to, it's not a give or take. It's not a transaction where we submit our independence, our energy independence, in return to get green energy. Because remember what happened once where a majority of our highland forests were culled in the name of somebody else's economy, and we're still grappling with that loss. So I think that's a wonderful question, a wonderful comment, and I hope I was able to enlighten you a little more. Thank you.
Sinta, if I would request you to respond, and then
okay. I think just a quick one. The question is really relating on the knowledge or probably the wisdom that's already a lesson learned from the community. I just take an example in Indonesia. APAT has been actually working on the knowledge management platform. This is really the effort to capturing all the lesson learned way, 100 years ago already exists in Indonesia. I believe it's also the same in other countries in Asia Pacific. So this disasterchannel.co is one of the initiatives that we kicked off in 2015 back then, because we understand that there is no single source of information, not to mention knowledge, that can be utilized to be able to use for us mitigating the risks for disasters. And I think for most important is really educating the young generation, because all those knowledge are kept between, amongst our ancestors. It's not being transferred to the younger generation. And this is one part of the role of mission of APAT. We would like to be the hub of knowledge so that we can bring innovation, not only in technical innovation, but also social as well as environment. So this disasterchannel.co that we actually established has been a running series of research, dialogue, and this is all a possible effort that we could do across nations. And it is, I think, with the COVID lesson, the dialogue is not only face-to-face. We could do now more effectively doing online. And I think this is a practical, I would say, practices that we can adopt in the rest of the region. I think it's even amongst us in the country. We can learn from Sri Lanka, we can learn from Philippines, on other country in the region, so that collectively we can work on it and really create something together as a solution. I think that's my additional
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sunita. Thank you for that very thought-provoking idea. And one thing that resonates throughout the panel is knowledge. The importance of knowledge from a financial perspective, understanding the gaps and how we can share that knowledge, looking at it from a perspective of children, looking at it at the state level. Dr. Malvathantri has shed a lot of light this afternoon, this morning, and shared so much of information that is probably not known, that is not understood by people, because they don't have that knowledge. Looking at it from Indonesian perspective, or looking at it from the perspective of the Philippines or the larger Asia-Pacific region, looking at the entirety of the region that we live in, knowledge remains probably one of the most key factors there. And before we sum up, I would like to ask Harsh for just 3 minutes, where we would like to ask each panelist to take maybe 30 seconds to give us your takeaway. What are we going to take away from today? Everyone in this room is converted. We're preaching to the converted here. There's no one in this room, I think, who feels, no, there's no such thing as climate change, there's no problem, we're just wasting time, we're just here because Harsh invited us, we've got to sit here. That's not the reason. We're here because we all believe in something, we're converted. We understand that there is a problem. We understand that something has got to be done about it. What are we going to do in terms of that knowledge dissemination? Where can we start? We've already started lots of initiatives, but what is that one crucial factor that we should take away today from this session? If I were to start with Mr. Matsato.
Well, thank you very much for this great discussion and the comments from the floor. One keyword coming up is that nowadays the limit of capitalism and the future of capitalism are being discussed worldwide. And many people think that capitalism needs to be upgraded, right? However, next question is how? And my takeaway from this session is that we need to face the answer, we need to face the questions how we can activate invisible heart of markets instead of just heavily rely on the invisible hand of God in the market. To activate the invisible heart, we may start from plastic bag, we may start from impact investment, or we may start from the collaboration for disaster management in this country. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back into history with a quick quote that we all are, I'm sure, aware of, where King Parakram Bahu the Great was quoted in the Mahavamsa as saying that not a single drop of water should flow out into the ocean without benefit to man. It's actually a misquote. The Mahavamsa, the Sinhala translation of the Pali word is lokopakaraya. It has no man in it. Lokopakaraya means for the benefit of the whole world. That is the philosophical change and shift of our mindset that we must try to understand. That's how our ancients built our civilization. Every resource was used for the protection of nature. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think that the main point for us will be that climate financing and policy decisions cannot continue to neglect the needs and rights of children. This must change. Countries have to prioritize actions in every aspect of childhood, including health, nutrition, and education, or social protection. And we have to remember that children and young people are part of the solution. We have to listen to them, and we have to, because children are not only the present, but they are the future, and they have rights to live in a healthy environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Two quick areas. While hearing it, one thing, this knowledge exchange has to be elevated to a very high level. One example is Sri Lanka borrowed a lot of things from Philippines. The wind atlas was borrowed from Philippines and we made it here. The lead phase out in gasoline was based on Philippines. And then the hazard profiles of Sri Lanka Disaster Management Center did, the impetus came from the Philippine Disaster Management Center. The latest project is on the environmental economics, is copied from your World Bank Waves project. Now I'm just citing 4 examples came from one country. How about getting a lot from many countries rather than reinventing the wheel? The second point I would like to conclude is this climate prosperity angle. Climate change is taking us down. We need to go in somehow, put all our heads together to get a trajectory to grow faster than that, and then do it in a green way rather than creating more problems. Thank you.
Right. So I'm also would like to emphasize the roles of women in this disaster management, which is critical for the holistic effort to build sustainable resilience. And it is imperative to have the inclusive strategy. The multi-stakeholder collaboration is actually the best approach or mechanism in building synergy to create bigger impact to save more lives. So I would like to invite all of us here to transform risks into opportunities towards a climate resilient tomorrow. Thank you.
Building better before is our great tool for a sustained compounding growth that each and every one of us would like to achieve.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much to all of our panelists for sharing not only their insight from their varied sectors, but also for bringing us to a very important point, whether it was the question mark that comes up about using of plastic bags, whether it's about the implementation of SDGs, whether it's about climate financing, whatever the question may be, the common denominator here is knowledge, the need for knowledge, the need of sharing knowledge, making people that much more aware. That is what we have got to do. That is a role that each and every one of us have, not sitting in a very complacent manner and hoping that someone will do something somewhere along the line. That's not going to happen. We've got to be the difference, make the change, walk that extra mile. And maybe as a takeaway, and Harsh, maybe request also in terms of the inclusion in the report that you are compiling with regard to this session. We've had participants who've traveled from near and far to be here today. What is going to be the outcome of this session? What is going to be the direct result of this particular APAD deliberation that is taking place here in Colombo? Could we come back then to UNICEF? If we talk about that particular point in wrapping it up, children are very much present in the present, but they're also very much part of the future. If we want to stop people using that plastic bag, we've got to start with children. Adults know the difference. Adults know it, they're not doing it. Somewhere along the line, something has broken down. Children are a very important tool in understanding what this whole nature of biodegradable items are, what plastic is, the impact it is having, the damage it is doing. Children understand things. They will remember these things. They will take these into their later years. They are ambassadors, they are representatives we are sending into a future that we will not see. We will not be there in. We've already messed things up for ourselves at the moment. We've at least got to start making the change now. Whether it is having media focus on it, whether it is talking about adequate finance for it, whether it is we're looking at it from a state perspective and what the state can do, could we look at the publication, the bringing out of some kind of manual for children, hoping that children will understand the bigger perspective, children understand what farming is, children understand agriculture, children understand the impacts of glaciers melting, sea levels rising, droughts, floods, so that children understand it. And this is where, if we do that, I know we can say that we can do it on an IT platform, we can share it around the world, we can do so much, but there are many children in rural areas of this country who do not have that access, who do not have access to lots of modern technology that we take for granted. Everyone here has got a mobile phone in their hands. Children out there do not have a lot of that access. Why can't we see the evolution of some kind of small publication that every single child in every single school, in every single village of this country can take home, talk about, share with their parents? This is what we are supposed to do, not what we are doing. This is where, whether it is in terms of financing, and probably we'll turn to organizations which are involved in financing, in terms of publications, whether it is the media of disseminating this information, letting schools know that there is something on this scale, whether it is UNICEF taking this example out there to other countries which are also facing similar situations, the state playing a big role in supporting that through the Ministry of Education, through the Presidential Secretariat, of getting that off the ground, whether you can take it to your respective countries as well, where we see a future that is very clear. We are navigating very complex issues, but hopefully these are issues that we can overcome, and we should overcome as we go ahead. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Dr. George. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the second panel discussion, and I take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed panelists and to our panel chair. We are profoundly grateful for your time and knowledge. We invite our audience to be a continued part of this conversation. If you have further insights, suggestions, or feedback, we genuinely welcome your thoughts. Please email us at symposium@apad.lk. As we reach the conclusion of our engaging panel discussion on climate-smart collaboration, accelerating transition towards a climate-resilient tomorrow, I take this moment to kindly invite Ms. Rochelle Carnival to deliver the vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As we come to the close of the APAD International Symposium, it is an honor and privilege for me to extend our heartfelt gratitude on behalf of APAD Sri Lanka to all those who have made this event possible. First and foremost, I would like to express our deepest appreciation to our esteemed chief guest, His Excellency Mr. Mizukoshi Hideki, the Ambassador of Japan to Sri Lanka. Your presence here today has added immense prestige to our symposium, and we are sincerely grateful for your support. We would also like to extend our sincere thanks to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Japan, Embassy of Japan, and the people of Japan for their unwavering support for Sri Lanka and the APAD platform. To our guest of honor, Mr. Chiyo Kanda, we express our heartfelt gratitude for gracing us with your presence. Your insights and contributions have enriched our discussions and elevated our symposium. A special thank you goes out to Mr. Kensuke Onishi, Professor Zaman, and the APAD Management Office in Japan for their continued support of the APAD local platforms and for their exemplary commitment towards advancing disaster resilience in the Asia-Pacific region. To Major General Sudhanta Ranasinghe and the Disaster Management Center, we are deeply grateful for our vibrant partnership and appreciate your commitment to ensuring the safety and resilience of our nation. I further wish to express my gratitude to the representatives of our APAD member platforms who have joined us from across the region. Your presence here has made this symposium a truly global gathering of minds, adding both depth and dimension to the discourse. To our international partners, especially the Connecting Business Initiative in Geneva, we thank you for your invaluable contributions and continuous encouragement and support in amplifying APAD's efforts globally. Our sincere appreciation also goes out to our state and private sector partners who have played a crucial role in fostering collaboration and innovation in disaster management.
We thank you for your trust in us and passion towards advancing disaster risk reduction efforts. Moreover, we must acknowledge and thank our esteemed panelists and moderators. Your insights and experience have enriched our understanding of the complex challenges posed by climate change and the urgent need for resilience. On behalf of APAT Sri Lanka, I extend my sincere gratitude to you. A heartfelt thank you to our media partners, both digital and print, and a special note of thanks goes out to News First for their extensive coverage and support in sharing the important discussions held here with a wider audience. Our gratitude extends to Ms. Tiara Ganegama and the Pearl Protectors for sharing her powerful story of diving in the coast of Sri Lanka and illustrating the profound impacts of climate change. Your personal testimony has touched our hearts and inspired us all. To our diverse and engaged audience, both in person and virtual, we appreciate your active participation and insightful questions, which have made this symposium a dynamic and interactive event. A special mention must be made to Harsh, our County Director, who has been a guiding force behind the scenes and was instrumental in ensuring the smooth execution of this event. Last but not least, a special thanks goes out to my dedicated colleagues who worked tirelessly to ensure the seamless execution of this event, without whom none of this would have been possible. In closing, I want to emphasize that the success of this symposium is a testament to the power of partnership, where we collectively work to accelerate the transition towards a climate-resilient tomorrow. Together, we can make a difference in the face of adversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rochelle. As we move forward from this space, let's carry with us the knowledge that our voices matter, our actions have consequences, and our collaborations hold the potential to transform the world. The seeds of positive change have been sown here today. As collective positive efforts towards climate action, at our very own International Symposium, we have taken the initiatives. For example, the water glasses that have been provided for our participants is an example that we have taken the initiatives. Also, on a side note, if you take a look back, you can see that we have an array of plants arranged for all the participants here, and we encourage all our participants to take a plant as you leave, for it stands as a reminder that each small action we take contributes to a larger positive impact. Thank you for being a part of this event. We invite all of you to join us for the delightful lunch and the networking session that awaits us. Thank you.
Should die tonight, we should all die together. Raise a glass of wine for the last time. Holding out by the road, prepare as we will. Watch the flames burn over and on the mountainside. Desolation comes upon the sky. Now I see fire.